Let's get it. 580 Sports Talk coming at you on a Wednesday. Hi, hello, how the heck are you? Thanks for hanging out with us. Whether you're listening on 580 WIBW FM 104.9, online worldwide at 580WIBW.com, or if you're checking us out on our video stream on YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here. Dan Lucero, Spencer Dupuis running a two-man game for you this afternoon with Brendan Dworzinski gallivanting about on his MIAA travels. Brendan will be in Joplin, Missouri tonight for Washburn basketball. They take on Missouri Southern. Pregame at 5:15, women's game at 5:30, men's game to follow on our sister station, home for the Ichabod's Classic Country 106.9. So no Brendan today. It's just the two of us, Spencer and I. We can make it if we try, and we will, over the next 4 hours. Got a full show for you today. Lots of great stuff to bring you. And again, we appreciate you being along for the ride on this Hump Day edition of the show. We've got a ton of Chiefs stuff to get to today. There is a lot of Chiefs content. This is the most Chiefs content that we have had on a show since the NFL season came to a close. Not all of it is real good. The NFLPA player report cards came out today, and they do not paint the picture at One Arrowhead Drive in a particularly flattering light. And they really don't paint Clark Hunt in a very flattering light. I'm going to tell you right now, spoiler alert, we're going to get to this in the 4 o'clock hour. We're going to talk more about these grades. And I don't know what they mean or don't mean, like in the grand scheme. I don't know what the broad contextualization of this thing is. But one conclusion I feel comfortable drawing is the people who filled out that survey do not like Clark Hunt.
Noted it was done by November 23rd.
And it got nothing to do with Super Bowls. It's got nothing to do with on-the-field success. They don't like that man. Because it is a very personal thing to say, not only am I going to grade you poorly, I am going to give you an F-. That is the ownership grade that the reigning, defending, two-time back-to-back world champions owner was given in this NFLPA survey. Clark Hunt got an F-. That is personal. That's more personal than an F.
Yeah.
Frankly. So we're going to talk about that and some of the other demerits that the Chiefs received. Also, the one thing they got an A on, I don't think will surprise you when we get around to that discussion as well. There was other off-the-field news today. We got to see renderings of the reimagined Arrowhead Stadium. It probably isn't quite what you imagined.
A dud.
Dud is strong.
A dud for what could have happened, what they could have done.
Dud is a little strong, but it does feel like perhaps... let's just say this. If you were expecting not a ballpark village, that's the Royals domain, but if you were expecting some broader entertainment offerings, you're probably a little disappointed. If you were expecting more parking, then you're delighted. It's great for parking enthusiasts. I will tell you that. We'll talk a little bit about that. Also, very noteworthy, how much the Chiefs are going to kick in for this renovation relative to how much the Royals are willing to kick in for their brand new ballpark.
But that's a different thing, too. I don't understand why it's being made that big of a deal.
It is a big deal, and I'm going to tell you why it's a big deal a little bit later on in the program. As far as the on-the-field product, the Chiefs did a thing we all expected they were going to do today, made a transaction we all saw coming, and we will say our goodbyes, our fond farewells, and the fact that they ended up being fond is a little surprising, but we will say our fond farewells to Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Also, some more rumor mongering as it pertains to L'Jarius Sneed and his future, either with the Chiefs or elsewhere. That's coming up on the show. Lots of Chiefs discussion to get to today. We're going to talk about KU because they lost at home to BYU last night. That's the same team that K-State put a hurting on at Bramlage on Saturday. They went to Allen Fieldhouse and made 14 three-pointers and stole one from the Jayhawks last night. And this is not something you have really been alive for, Spencer, and that's not really an exaggeration. With 3 games left in the Big 12 regular season race, KU is an afterthought. They're cooked. They're 3 out with 3 to go. They're not winning the league. And you can say that firmly before the final week of the regular season even gets underway. And that never happens.
But that's all tied to Kevin McCullough Jr.'s absence.
Well, a lot of it, and certainly missed him last night. But there's some broader things at play here. We'll discuss Kansas's loss to the Cougars. KU suffering from a particularly nasty case of the ball wouldn't go in the basket. And that's really all you need to know. That and McCullough didn't play. But we'll speak more broadly about what we saw last night on one of the worst television broadcasts I've ever had the displeasure of watching.
Oh, my gosh. Did you see my tweet? I turned it on a few minutes left in the ball game when I got home from the high school game that I called. And I was like, this is something that like a Division II would put out.
By that time, I had already muted the broadcast. We kept losing the audio. We kept getting like an underwater sounding microphone. It was all very strange. I can't imagine having been a KU fan and sitting through that last night. And then, oh yeah, your team can't make a shot.
Yeah.
And they trick off a home game to BYU. That had to be agonizing for the KU contention out there. We're going to talk about that. That's a loss that eliminates KU from the Big 12 championship conversation firmly with 3 games to play. As it pertains to their seeding, I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine, but we'll break that down later on in today's show. We're going to talk some K-State as well. Tim Fitzgerald will join us 4:30 for the Wildcat Wrap-Up. Fitz will have plenty to say about back-to-back victories for K-State on the men's hardwood. We'll get his thoughts. We've also got 2 other guests today, our Lewis Toyota High School Athletes of the Week. It was last weekend an outstanding showing for Topeka and Shawnee County athletes at the state wrestling tournaments, and 2 team titles made their way back to Shawnee County. Washburn Rural's girls doing it again, their 4th state title in 5 years in girls wrestling in Class 6A. The Rossville girls came away with their first girls wrestling state championship in Class 4 1A, and it was my pleasure to chat with both of the coaches of those state championship winning teams. We're going to hear from Bryce Gfeller, the head girls wrestling coach at Rossville, later on this hour, bottom of this 2 o'clock hour. And at the bottom of the 3 o'clock hour, we're going to talk to Damon Parker, the head coach of the Washburn Rural girls wrestling team. And this is the highest compliment I can pay Damon Parker, because I've had the pleasure now of interviewing him several times. I never wrestled. I don't know if you can believe that, looking at me or knowing like literally anything about me. Wrestling, I don't have that sport in my background. I don't have that sport in my blood. Damon Parker might have been able to convince me to join a wrestling team. That's the kind of person he is. That's the kind of enthusiasm he has. That's how much fun he is to talk to. And I have a lot of regard for Damon Parker, and look forward to bringing you that interview. That'll be again at the bottom of the 3 o'clock hour. Bottom of this hour, we'll hear from Bryce Gfeller. Lots of Lewis Toyota High School Athletes of the Week to celebrate today. Plus our What Is Wrong With You February semifinals, sports headlines in the 5 o'clock hour, and a whole lot more. It's a jam-packed show today. That's how
really jam-packed.
Yeah, how you know we spent 10 minutes telling you what is going to be all on the show today. And again, we want you to be involved in the program today. The text line is still down. Text line's still down, unfortunately. Yeah, you could have played the I don't know if we have the Price is Right sad sound. I don't think we have it.
If we should, though, I should put that in there.
You should. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man, you're at the control. You can play whatever sound effects you want at any given time. We're not going to, we might boo you or like, I might throw a wad it up. I might throw like this pen at the glass, but I can't do anything to
Text today.
Yeah, sorry. We cannot take your text today. But do account 580 Sports Talk. We stream live on Twitter. We also stream on Facebook. WIBW News is the Facebook page. You can post comments in there, and we see those too. So.
Hey, Mark is wondering what hat you're wearing. Unfortunately, the light has kind of
it's rough. I'll show it off at the commercial break. These are this is the Charleston Beach Dogs of the Florida State League. I'll show it off a little
Also,
bit. Also,
apparently our stream has been lagging.
I can't speak to that one way or another. I'm not in charge of
I don't know. It's went black, and then people have been commenting that the streaming sucks, but it's not as bad as texting.
We may have an audio issue going on that we will try and address. Bear with us. We'll get it figured out. Anyhow, that's how you interact with us on the show today. Let's talk Chiefs because we do have some real Chiefs news. We will not be playing in full. It's so hard to say goodbye to yesterday by Boys to Men. Because, again, given the restrictions of the stream, we don't want to get our stream yanked down. But just imagine that It's So Hard to Say Goodbye to Yesterday is playing in the background. As we say goodbye to Marquez Valdez-Scantling, the Chiefs made it's being reported today that the Chiefs will, in fact, release the veteran wide receiver. It will save them $12 million to the salary cap. There is only $2 million in dead cap with his release, which appears to be pending. Chiefs have not made that transaction official, but it was widely expected and is now being widely reported that is what will happen. And that is what you do with a player who only caught 21 passes last season on 42 targets, which is astounding and kind of in line with his career numbers. In Marquez Valdez-Scantling's career, he has caught just over 50% of his targets. Just over 50%. Now, a lot of those non-catches are sometimes because the ball isn't catchable, but as we documented throughout the 2023 season, MVS dropped a lot of balls this past year. And he only caught 21 of them for 315 yards. That was a career low, by the way, 15 yards per reception. And he had just one touchdown in the regular season. However, MVS rewrote the narrative a little bit on his season with what he did in the postseason. Some big plays against the Buffalo Bills, the game-clinching reception against the Baltimore Ravens, and, of course, a touchdown in the Super Bowl. Playoff MVS, following his 8-catch, 100-plus yard touchdown performance in last year's AFC Championship game, playoff MVS appeared to be a legitimate phenomenon. Like there maybe was a little bit of something to that. And usually when we say somebody is playoff X, that is, playoff Lenny. Leonard Fournette called himself playoff Lenny. We kind of roll our eyes at that. Who was in the NBA? Paul George tried to call himself playoff P, and he's never won a ring. So a lot of people, when they say they're playoff so-and-so, we roll our eyes, right? Well, maybe there's a little bit of something to the idea that MVS took his game to a different level these last two postseasons, and it's hard to imagine the Chiefs having won the Super Bowl without him. I mean, in that AFC Championship game against Cincinnati last season, he was about the only ambulatory wide receiver the Chiefs had left by the end of that game. And he had a monster game, and he caught that touchdown in the second half. A great catch on what I believe to be one of the 5 best throws of Patrick Mahomes' career, given the circumstances. There are some fond memories, but there are also just 63 catches in 2 years for just over 1,000 yards, 1,002 yards. It is hard to argue that the Chiefs got what they paid for vis-a-vis MVS. And when you have an opportunity to save that much money on the salary cap for a receiver who, in a perfect world, is no better than your wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4 next year, then this is the no-brainer move. And it's, you know how we know it's a no-brainer? Because us, sitting in this room, never been in an NFL front office in our lives, looked at the balance sheet and said, oh yeah, releasing MVS sure makes a lot of sense. And so that's what the Chiefs will do. And I think it's a fitting tribute. Like Paul, I think, gets it right in the YouTube comments. Postseason legend. Certainly don't win back-to-back titles without him. Not at all sad to see him go. Like, that's the catch-22, right?
Yeah.
Like, pat him on the back. It's been real. It's been fun. There were times it wasn't real fun. And good luck. And the advantage of doing this for a veteran player too, making this move this early in the process, is that you give the player more of a chance to catch on somewhere else. And so really these early releases, you're trying to do a veteran a solid too. Like, obviously there's benefits both ways. The Chiefs benefit with the freedom under the salary cap, but they also have an opportunity to give MVS a head start on finding somewhere else to play. And I think a veteran wide receiver with some blocking skills, with the ability to run fast still, he's still fast.
Yeah.
I think he'll find a home.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think easily you give him probably one of those 1 year prove it deals, 3 to 5.5 million the 1 year, I think is, from my point of view, a good contract to offer him.
I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up with something like that.
Yeah.
And a team that maybe is young at wide receiver, needs a veteran. The move, again, saves $12 million. There's only $2 million in dead cap for the Chiefs. So a $12 million savings gets the Chiefs, as it currently stands, to right about $9 million below the cap. There are going to be some fluctuating numbers you see on that because there are some performance-based raises coming for players who are on their rookie deals. Guys like Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith are going to see a bit of a pay bump next year because of what's written into the league's collective bargaining agreement. So you might see a cap number that says one thing one day, and then you might see it say something else the next day. So, take those numbers with a grain of salt. Obviously, what the Chiefs have prioritized this offseason are their two stars on defense, Chris Jones and L'Jarius Sneed. James Palmer of NFL Network tweeted earlier today, the Chiefs' plan is to have their first real meetings with both Chris Jones's reps and L'Jarius Sneed's reps completed by the end of today. There is a thought the failed negotiations last year are actually viewed as helpful as the talks with Jones's reps get going. I guess that makes a certain amount of sense. It's like if you're trying to complete a task, you hit a checkpoint.
Yeah.
Like on Super Mario, right? You hit a checkpoint and then you die later on. You don't get to the finish. They don't make you start all the way at the beginning, right? You start at the checkpoint.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's like there were some things, there was some language that both sides maybe did see eye to eye on, and they just couldn't get there with the total value, or they just couldn't get there with some of the bonuses or the number of years, whatever it was that kept Jones and the Chiefs from being able to come to a long-term agreement. Those are probably still the roadblocks, the things that the Chiefs and Jones's representatives have to surmount. But at least you know where those are. You're not wasting any time getting there. You're already there. You know what Chris Jones and his people want. Now you can come and say, okay, well, he's a year older. He wasn't quite as productive last year, but he's still a double-digit sack guy, still a first-team All-Pro, still helped us win a Super Bowl. Now let's see if we can bridge this gap. Ian Rappaport of NFL Network reported that the Chiefs have granted L'Jarius Sneed permission to seek a trade. Now, that is not a surprise, as it was reported yesterday or hinted at least yesterday, that the Chiefs have been open with L'Jarius Sneed that, hey, we're going to use our franchise tag on you. We're going to see if we can bring you back. And if we can't, we want you to be able to find a place that you're going to be able to get the long-term deal that you're looking for. Left unsaid is the understanding at One Arrowhead Drive that they may not be able to give L'Jarius Sneed the money he's looking for. And the more that it is reported that he is out there seeking the trade, the less likely that it feels to me that Sneed comes back. They can't go into next year without both Jones and Sneed. And I have to say that I wavered on this from the start of training camp to the end of training camp to the middle of the season to the end of the season to now. I have flip-flopped. I have done more flipping and flopping than like a professional BMX trick guy. That's a terrible analogy. Oh, my God. That's the worst analogy I've ever done on this radio show. I've done a lot of flip-flopping is what I'm saying. I've flip-flopped like a politician. I was for something before I was against something. And
haven't heard that. Definitely have heard that before.
Yeah. I say all that to say this. I go through these tortured analogies to say this. I think the Chiefs are making the right decision prioritizing Chris Jones over L'Jarius Sneed. And the reason I think they're making the right decision is because they will feel more confident in finding another L'Jarius Sneed than they will feel confident about finding another Chris Jones. That is my stance on the subject. I'm curious, Spencer, where you stand on that. If they can only prioritize, well, they're prioritizing. Well, they want to make it both happen. In a perfect world, both of those guys are back in Kansas City next year. But if they can only prioritize one, if they can only choose one, do you think it's the right call to put their eggs in the Chris Jones basket?
Yeah.
And why?
Because he's a pass rusher. He showed promise last year as he's over the age of 30. I think cornerbacks, it feels like cornerbacks are a dime a dozen. Like you could just find one. And
the Chiefs have sure made it feel that way, right?
Yeah. And I mean, with McDuffie, I mean, you have, young guys that are probably going to draft somebody. There's just a lot of options at corner. They have a lot of depth at corner and at the defensive back in general, I think, whereas they don't necessarily have that depth at defensive end position. This is actually my topic for One's Got to Go later.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
A little tease there for later on. We are doing One Got to Go in the 3:00 hour. But that is the latest on the field from the Chiefs. The Chiefs are planning to release Marquez Valdez-Scantling. No great surprise. The Chiefs have granted L'Jarius Sneed permission to seek a trade. We had seen that hinted at yesterday. Now Ian Rappaport is reporting it. That is the clearest indication we have gotten yet that the Chiefs are saying Chris Jones is target number one. If we've got enough cap room left and we can make it work with L'Jarius Sneed, we'd love to. If we can't, we're going to trade him on the tag. So the plan is starting to become a little clearer. But again, I don't think it's something that is out of left field from this front office. I think that it's been pretty easy to read tea leaves and predict what the Chiefs will do to this point. But again, it's very, very early yet in the offseason. We're not even at the start of the new league year yet. So still some time for some different developments, but that is what is developing today. There's also lots of off-the-field Chiefs news, including a reimagined Arrowhead Stadium. What does it look like? How much is it going to cost? How much do the Hunts want you, the fan, or you, the Jackson County, Missouri taxpayer, to pick up on the tab? We'll talk about that next as 580 Sports Talk gets rolling on this Wednesday on 580 WIBW. 2:33 on 580 Sports Talk. We're just getting started on this Wednesday edition. Just Dan and Spencer with you today. Brendan is in Joplin, Missouri. He may not be there yet, but he'll get there eventually.
En route.
En route to Joplin.
You say en route?
Yes.
Is en route? Is that not is route route? Like what's your take on that? En
route is probably the Americanized version of it. I don't think either one is wrong.
Yeah.
Necessarily. I've just always said en route. I don't know. Sometimes
I say en route, but en route. Like if I'm talking like en route, like I don't know. I different phrases for different.
Like I said, it's a phrase that probably gets Americanized a little bit, and nothing wrong with the way either of us said it. But anyway, Brendan is going to Joplin, Missouri. How about we just avoid the whole tomato part?
Yeah, there you
go. And he's going to Joplin, Missouri for Washburn basketball. Pregame coverage at 5:15 on our sister station, Classic Country 106.9. The Chiefs today released renderings for the reimagined Arrowhead Stadium. What they expect that Arrowhead Stadium, GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium, will look like into the future once the space at the Truman Sports Complex is entirely theirs after the Royals have built their new downtown ballpark and vacated the space. I think a lot of people have anticipated what it might look like, and that it might take the shape of something very similar to what the Patriots have in Foxborough, Patriot Place, where you have the stadium, yes, but outside the stadium, you've got some entertainment options. You got some restaurants. Maybe I think there's a hotel. There's some pre and post game entertainment opportunities there at Patriot Place. Something very similar outside of AT&T Stadium in Dallas, where you always had the whole athletic complex there. You had the old Globe Life Park at Arlington, and you have Globe Life Field, but you have restaurants, bars, hotels, the Walmart across the street from AT&T Stadium in walking distance. Shout out to that Walmart. That has come in clutch during a couple of Big 12 media days the last couple of years. Shout out to that Walmart. It's not that. I can tell you this. The renderings include use of the former Kauffman Stadium space for what is referred to as a turf-covered activation zone with tailgate areas and a covered entertainment space. So like a stage, like
a concert,
post-game concert type of things. But as far as restaurants, bars, hotels, things of that nature, nope. But do you like parking? Because there's lots more parking, a new parking deck on the south side of the stadium.
And a parking garage.
A new expanded parking on the north side of the stadium. So an increased total number of paved parking spots. Like as much as Chiefs fan culture is centered around the tailgate experience at Arrowhead Stadium, I get it. But also this would feel like a little bit of a missed opportunity if the Chiefs do nothing more with the new space they would have than to just put down some greenery and a spot for like post-game concerts. I think if you're trying to keep fans on site, I think there's a better way to do it. And I'm a little surprised, in fact, that there's not allowances for retail space. Some of the other changes, the new pedestrian bridges, better ride share experiences, changes in the concession stands, new restrooms, new field access tunnels, new end zone clubs and suites. So
Wi-Fi TV upgrades,
like the end zone clubs and suites. Think about like what you see in Dallas or what you see in Vegas or Seattle. You have the field level suites right behind the end zones or right behind the benches. New sideline clubs in the lower levels, upper concourse canopies, a connection bridge on the upper concourse as well. So there's lots of functional changes to the stadium. Bigger scoreboards, naturally maintaining the classic oval shape, but growing in size. I think, though, a lot of people thought that one of two things, or maybe both things in a perfect world for them would happen. One, a retractable roof. I think people would like to see a roof at Arrowhead so that here's the reason people want a roof. Two reasons. A Kansas City Super Bowl, and B, the possibility of bringing the Final Four back. And I understand, particularly sensitive to the Final Four thing, because I think that's more realistic. Like the NFL might give you a Super Bowl and then they're not coming back. You get one, you get one Super Bowl, but the Super Bowl by and large is staying in the event cities. It's staying in New Orleans, Vegas. Now that they've been to Vegas, I don't think like if you put a retractable roof on hoping for a Super Bowl, maybe you get one. But I don't think that Kansas City joins the Super Bowl rotation. Much more realistic, they would join the Final Four rotation. And I'm saying I like that idea in theory. I mean, Kansas City's hosted still more Final Fours than any other city. There's something to be said for that. People, I think, either wanted that or they wanted a entertainment district outside the stadium with some pre and post game entertainment options that go beyond, whatever you've got cooking in your grill on the tailgate. Neither of those things being part of this, I will say, is a little surprising. I thought that might be a direction they chose to go. It does not appear that will be the case. The other thing that stands out about these renderings and what the Chiefs themselves had to say about them today was that Clark Hunt says the total cost for the renovation project, which won't take place until after the World Cup in 2026 and would probably be on target to finish entirely. Obviously, the Royals have to be done moving first, but it will be
on that.
Right. And it'll be done by 2030, 2031. Clark Hunt says the total cost is $800 million. The Hunts will invest $300 million. The Royals, on the flip side, have promised a $1 billion investment from their ownership for their brand new downtown stadium. Now, I realize that the Royals promising more than the total cost for the renovation project, it's a difference in how much it costs. But there is a perception, and we will get into it much more because the perception also comes from the players. There is a perception that the Hunt family is a little thrifty when it comes to spending money on things. This does not help. The idea that the Hunts are unwilling to cover even half of the total cost of this renovation project. The rest would be from the sales tax that is going to be voted on there in Jackson County in April. I don't know. That doesn't sit right with me.
Yeah.
They're billionaires. They've never been worth more than they are right now. Renovate your own damn stadium is how I feel about it. I don't think they should be leaning that heavily on the public for money for this project. I really don't. So that's where I stand as far as that goes. Again, little surprised there's not more done in the way of entertainment options. I'm not surprised there's not a retractable roof, but I know some people were desirous of that. But the renderings are out there if you want to go look at them. It doesn't functionally change the face of Arrowhead Stadium unless you think that the bigger scoreboards are that much of a big deal. We got to take a break. Lewis Toyota High School Athletes of the Week, Part 1, coming up next with Rossville girls wrestling coach Bryce Gfeller on 580 Sports Talk. A lot had to go right on the final day of the 4-1A girls wrestling state tournament for the Rossville Bulldogs to bring home their first state championship in girls wrestling, and it all did. I got to talk to their head coach, Bryce Gfeller, a Rossville alumni and former state champion wrestler himself, all about it. Here's that conversation as part of our Lewis Toyota High School Athletes of the Week. Eventually. Let's try that again. Is it, let's try it now.
Our Lewis Toyota High School Athletes of the Week this week are the state champion wrestling teams in the area, and we honor the Rossville Bulldog girls, champions in Class 4-1A, with their first team title in their program's history. Speaking with their head coach and Rossville alum, Bryce Gfeller. And Bryce, I want you to take me to the championship rounds on Saturday, when you need a whole lot of everything to go exactly right for your team to win a state championship. Are you even thinking of that as a possibility as a coach in the back of your mind? Or are you just thinking, you know what, if our girls who are wrestling in this championship round let it all hang out, wrestle their best, then we can walk away from this thing with our heads held high? How much were you thinking about really capturing a team state title, given how much the odds were kind of stacked against you going into that round?
Well, we sat down going into the championship round and kind of figured the points and figured out what exactly had to happen in that last round to clinch the team title. And the only way to really do it was to win both of our finals matches and then one of them by pin. So going into it, the coaches knew the situation, but we tried to keep what we needed away from the wrestlers because we knew it was a long shot. And putting that much pressure on them going into the state finals match isn't good either. So we just kind of let them do their thing and trusted that they would take care of business. Kendra was able to find the bonus points at the very, very end of that match, which ended up clinching our team title. But going into it, we just kind of let the athletes do their thing, and then everything else just kind of fell into place for them.
I want to talk about your individual champions, Bryce, and we'll start with Kendra Hurla, who you mentioned, who got that last-second pin in her championship match at 120 pounds. Take me through that match, what you saw from Kendra in that match, and how she was able to finish that with the pin that she needed.
We knew going in that, we've wrestled Landreth 2 times prior that season. One of them we got a pin, and the other one was pretty much just like the state finals match where it came down to the last period and having to come back from a little bit of a deficit. The way she started out, I could kind of tell that she was a little erratic, but that kind of comes with the big stage and all. After she went down, though, you could see her kind of just calm down, and the nerves calmed down, and she just trusted in her ability. And I've never been so impressed with how calm and collected a wrestler has been, especially in a big stage like that. And she just kept wrestling every second hard. And that's how you find bonus points in matches like that. It's just wrestling every second of every match.
You know how hard it is to win a state championship in wrestling, having done it yourself twice. And you also know how hard it is to, after winning one, go back and climb that mountain and go do it again. Kendra Hurla became one of the first 3 girls in Kansas history to win 4 state-sanctioned individual state wrestling championships. In her quest for the 4th this year, in your first year as her coach, what traits did she show you throughout the season that indicated to you that she had the stuff to go win that 4th?
Kind of like what I was saying just a second ago. She is one of the wrestlers, or one of her biggest traits is that she is able to stay calm through a match and trust in her ability. Both times she was down early in matches this year, she settled her nerves, didn't freak out, and stayed calm, and just wrestled hard. Another thing that she does really well is she gets into a zone before a match. She's one of the sweetest girls off the mat, and then as soon as she starts warming up for that match, she's locked in. She's one of the meanest girls in the state, and she wrestles like that. She's aggressive. She's always wrestling.
Our guest is Bryce Gfeller, the head coach of the girls wrestling program at Rossville, the state champions in Class 4-1A this past Saturday, and our Lewis Toyota High School Athletes of the Week. Your other individual state champion, Haley Horton, at 155 pounds. That was a critical one, too, because it came against a wrestler from Oakley, the team you were trying to catch in the team standings as well. Talk me through her meet and how, maybe she operated on your team a little bit perception-wise in the shadow of somebody as accomplished as Herla, but was able to put her own name on the wall with a championship-winning performance last weekend.
Yeah, Haley wrestles just like how Kendra is. She's aggressive. She has a hard hand fight. We took a loss to that Oakley girl earlier in the season at Phillipsburg. It was like 3 weeks, I think, before state. And we got an injury during that match to our knee. So after that, it was more about rehabilitating that knee, making sure we were good. And then we were working to get that rematch in the state finals because we figured that's who we would have. Haley was super, super confident going in, and we prepared her really, really well for that rematch. So for her, it was mainly just controlling nerves and just going out and wrestling her match, which she did most of the year. She's been one of our more consistent wrestlers, and she gets big bonus points. She's a pinner. So her wins were a big part of our state title too. All the girls' wins were a big part of our state title.
Bryce Gfeller is our guest. He is the head girls wrestling coach at Rossville. At what point then did you tell your girls, hey, if this breaks right for us the rest of the day, we're going to be the team state champions? Was it after Haley's win at 155? What was the conversation like with the girls who were there?
I don't know exactly who told the girls because I was off trying to help get our boy ready because he was wrestling in the 215 finals. We didn't tell them until after Haley's match, and as soon as they figured that out, they went and sat behind Chanut's corner and started cheering for the Chanut girl. But it was after Haley's match. Haley didn't even know that a team title rode on her match as she went in.
What was the feeling like, the emotion like to win a team state championship? Again, you have the perspective, having won 2 individual state championships, of what that's like to have your hand raised in victory and to be at the top of the podium as an individual. But to do it as a team, what emotions did you see from your girls? What was the reaction like after you knew you'd wrapped it up?
I was excited. I didn't really know. It didn't really click for me until after we were holding the trophy, but I could see it immediately on the girls' faces. As soon as that Chanut girl's hand was raised, you could just see all of the emotion flood over their faces. It's huge. I mean, everything had to fall just right. It felt like it was almost meant to be the way it happened. And, I think it was my junior year, we made a state title run with my high school team, and we came up short runner-ups by like 4 points. So I know both sides of that feeling. And to actually clinch the title this time felt great.
Talk to me a little bit, Bryce, about your perspective on girls wrestling now, because this is 4 years now. It's a full class of girls who've been through with Keisha sanctioning girls wrestling. This was your first year as the head coach of a program. You'd been an assistant at Riley County, coming back to your alma mater at Rossville this year. What is your perspective on the girls' side of wrestling, how it's growing, how it's being received, the kinds of athletes who are participating in the sport now? What is your take on it as somebody who obviously has a great passion for the sport, competed at a high level in high school, coaches the sport now? What is your perspective on girls wrestling as it grows here in Kansas?
Oh, I love it. I think it's booming. We're going to see a lot more girls in the next few years, and this sport's going to grow a lot more. I think that girl wrestling, it's always been like when I was wrestling, it's just something that people didn't really think about really because it was girls and boys competing. Now that it's sanctioned and girls are able to wrestle girls, I'm seeing a lot more girls wanting to try it out and find success in it and find love for a sport that they probably never would have found if they didn't have it sanctioned for their own. So I think it's growing. I think it's amazing. I had a lot more junior high girls come out this year than we had last year. So I can tell that it's growing and people are interested. And I think that's great for the sport because it gives more diversity and allows more people to become fans and support the sport.
Bryce Gfeller coached the Rossville girls to the team state championship in Class 4-1A this year. It is the first team girls wrestling championship in Rossville history. They are Lewis Toyota High School Athletes of the Week. Bryce, congratulations to you, to Kendra, to Haley, to everybody who was a part and played a role in winning this team state championship. And thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
That's Bryce Gfeller. Stay with us. Hour number 2 of 580 Sports Talk coming up. We're talking KU. We'll hear from Damon Parker, Washburn Rural Wrestling. That's next on the show. Let's get it. Hour number 2, 580 Sports Talk on a Wednesday. Dan Lucero and Spencer Dupuis with you on today's edition of the show. Here with you until 6. Brendan Drzezinski has Washburn basketball tonight, 5:15 pregame from Missouri Southern in Joplin. Washburn taking on the Lions. That's over on our sister station, Classic Country 106.9, in about 2 hours. Women's game at 5:30, men's game to follow. In the meantime, we've got lots of great stuff coming your way on the program today. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, Damon Parker, head girls wrestling coach at Washburn Rural, the 6A state champions. 4 titles in 5 years for that program. And the Washburn Rural girls are also Lewis Toyota High School Athletes of the Week this year. Again, our thanks to Bryce Gfeller, the Rossville wrestling coach, for taking some time earlier this week to speak with me. That was part 1 of our Athletes of the Week. We aired that at the bottom of the last hour. If you missed it, you can catch it on the YouTube archive. You can also catch it on our podcast page, 580wibw.com. Hover over that podcast tab, click 580 Sports Talk. You get hour-by-hour breakdowns of the show every single day. So if you missed that interview or any of our content, basically ever, you can find it on the podcast page. Also still to come on today's show are What Is Wrong With You semifinals for the month of February. We have 5 really good stories. It may be a short month, February, but we are long on really good What Is Wrong With Yous, and it's going to be hard to get down to 2 today.
I had a perfect one for today and forgot that we did this wrap of the month, so hopefully I'll be able to have there was less details about it, so hopefully I'll be able to get more details potentially for Friday.
Yeah, we'll do new ones on Friday, but we've got our semifinals today. And Tim Fitzgerald to GoPowerCat.com will join us at the bottom of the 4 o'clock hour for the Wildcat Wrap-Up. But we start this hour with the Kansas Jayhawks, who lost at home to BYU last night, the 18th home loss in the Bill Self era. And I can only imagine what the experience was like if you were a Kansas fan on your couch watching last night's game on ESPN Plus with audio that kept cutting in and out and a KU offense that, with a 12-point lead early in the second half, just stopped being able to put the ball in the basket. That is a truism of basketball, that just because the ball is round and the hole you're trying to put it in is also round does not always mean that the ball will go through the basket. And last night, KU suffered from a particularly nasty case of ball will not go in basket. They were 6 of 26 from the field in the second half. They missed 12 of their 15 three-point attempts on the night. They missed 12 of their 31 free throws on the night. That gets you beat no matter who you are playing. You could be playing BYU. You could be playing UCF. You could be playing Cal Poly, who's winless in their conference. You could be playing the Topeka YMCA. Those stats in a half of basketball are going to get you beat, especially when the other team makes 14 three-pointers. BYU knows exactly who they are. I give Mark Pope a tremendous amount of credit for the season that BYU has had, because they have come into this league at an athletic disadvantage. Kansas State put that on full display on Saturday. If you hadn't watched much BYU this year for one reason or another, Kansas State showed on Saturday at Bramlage that BYU doesn't have great athletes. Like, they don't. They don't have a ton of athleticism. They got some length. They got some size. They've got a couple of bigs who are good players in Ali Khalifa and Fus Traore. But they don't have Big 12 athleticism. And K-State out-athleted them on Saturday because they've got Big 12 athletes. They've got Kaluma. They've got Carter. Jarrell Colbert is, even though he is not as good a player as Ali Khalifa or Fus Traore, he is more athletic than either of them. And K-State's bigs effectively played both Khalifa and Traore off the floor. BYU had to go to their third big on Saturday. That was the athletic advantage that Kansas State had over BYU. So they don't have, if I may borrow the term from Jerome Tang, dudes. Athletically speaking, that is not what they have. What they do have are shooters. And if they make threes, they can win games. They're a really good three-point shooting team. So more often than not, they do make three-pointers. But when you go back and you look at BYU's results this year, the games they've lost are games where they shot it about the way they shot it in Manhattan on Saturday, where they went 6 of 30 from three. Of course, last night, they turn around and they make 14 three-pointers against KU. KU only makes 3 of them. That's hard math to overcome. That's 11 points just in terms of made field goals. That is an 11-point edge to BYU. And you have to overcome that by being more efficient when you're shooting 2-pointers, which KU was not, especially in the second half. And you have to make your free throws, which KU did not. Hunter Dickinson is going to be an All-American, but he has played some games this year where he has not been good. And last night he was bad. Did not make free throws, could not finish around the basket. It was a bad night for Hunter Dickinson. And KU is not good enough, particularly with Kevin McCullough on the shelf, to win games where Hunter Dickinson doesn't play well. And he did not play well. It was a perfect storm, and it still took a late flurry from BYU to win the game. KU plays BYU 10 times, they probably win 8. Maybe even 9. But that was the kind of game it had to be for BYU to win it. KU shorthanded and shooting extremely poorly while they themselves shot it at a high level. A perfect storm and a BYU win at Allen Fieldhouse. And this is now uncharted territory for basically an entire generation of Kansas basketball fans. And that's not an exaggeration here. Spencer, I don't know how much you knew about Kansas basketball growing up on the East Coast.
Not, too much besides when they were in the tournament.
Yeah, right. You'd see them in the tournament every year, right? And they always had a really high seed.
Yeah, and they were always...
They didn't always make...
No, but they were always advancing at least to the Sweet 16 round of 32. Like, they were always there.
16...
They were always on the national spotlight.
Right.
But I never would,
were you aware of...
examine their team.
Were you aware of how many Big 12 championships they won in a row at a stretch?
No.
It was 16. They won 16 consecutive Big 12 championships. So, quite literally, this is something that a generation of Kansas fans has not experienced. There are seniors in Lawrence right now today waking up who have never dealt with this in their lifetimes. With 3 games to go in the Big 12 championship race, the race for the regular season title in this league, KU's out of it. They're toast. They are right now 9-6 in league play. That puts them 3 games behind Houston. Houston would have to lose out, and that would include losing at home to Kansas next Saturday. So, in a way, Kansas still controls their own destiny a little bit, but the best, absolute best they could do is share it, and they would need the number 1 team in the country to lose not once, but twice in their next 2 games. And I'm here to tell you that that is not happening. Houston's next 2 games are at Oklahoma and at UCF. They're going to win at least one of those. And that's going to be that for Kansas in the Big 12 title race. They are not a factor in that race with 3 games to play. And that is exceptionally rare. KU has to go to Waco on Saturday. They got the Sunflower Showdown for senior night next Tuesday with K-State coming to town. And then they go to Houston. There is a very real chance, particularly if Kevin McCullough does not return to the KU lineup, which feels more likely than not to be the outcome moving forward. It is very possible that Kansas ends the year with a 10-8 record in the Big 12. For historical perspective, the last time the Kansas Jayhawks lost 8 conference games in a season, you have to go back to the first year of the Roy Williams era. Now, longtime KU fans don't need me to tell you this, but if you're a little younger, a bit of historical perspective. That was 1988, 1989. Obviously, there's a big banner at one end of Allen Fieldhouse that says 1988 national champions. We all know that. We also know that Larry Brown left the program after that year. He beat feet out of town before some NCAA restrictions, some sanctions were put on the program. And those hindered Roy's first team in Lawrence. They went 19-12 and missed the tournament. They have not missed the tournament since.
Yeah.
They have made the tournament every single year from 1990 onward, with the obvious exception of the COVID year where there was no tournament. So that's how far back you have to go. That KU team, 88-89, 19-12, 6-8. 6-8 in the Big 8. Obviously not the Big 12 yet.
Yeah.
That's the last time KU lost even 7 conference games. So even if KU splits these tough road trips coming up down the stretch, even if they get one in either Waco or Houston, which I would not bet on, I don't think they're going to get one of those. Not without McCullough. But even if they do, they are looking with just one more conference loss at their worst conference season since the George H.W. Bush administration.
Wow. That is crazy.
It's wild to think about, right? Like how consistent Kansas has been. Like, we know that. That's self-evident. We see them in the NCAA tournament every year. But how consistent they've been in the league, how consistently they've been a threat to win the league. Even the last couple of years, when the league has gotten tougher and KU had league championships where they went 13-5 in the league, or they went 12-6 when they missed out, didn't win the league in 19, didn't win the league in 21, those years after the streak ended. They went 13-5 and won the league last year. They are looking likely to finish 10-8 in league play. That is remarkable. And even in the years 2019 and 2021, when KU was clearly not at their imperious best. Like, it's so funny to look back at those years, 2019 and 2021. Those were not particularly great KU teams. They were still good KU teams, but by KU standards, they were not what we have come to expect. They certainly did not measure up to the teams that came the years before and the years after. 2018 went to the Final Four, asterisk. 2020, I will argue, I know you guys know Brendan will argue that team would win a national championship because he's a Jayhawk for life. I'm telling you from my perspective as someone who does not have a diploma from the University of Kansas on my wall, Kansas would have won the national championship in 2020. That team was awesome. And if they wouldn't have won it, they would have gone to the final and lost to Baylor. That team rocked. Like, 2020 KU was sick. And then 2022, obviously they did go and win the national championship. But 2019 and 2021, those were kind of the fallow years there in between. They were very much in between teams, and both of those teams lost in the first weekend of the tournament. Even those years, I never felt like the floor for KU's game-over-game performance was as low as it is this season. Because I don't care if Kevin McCullough plays or not. You should have enough juice to beat BYU at home. BYU has no athletes. They are like an unathletic Creighton.
That's a good way to put it.
Like, and I do mean that as a compliment because, like Creighton, BYU can stroke it. Like, if you give them room, and that is the one thing that Bill Self said after the game, they didn't defend the three-point line well enough. That has been a problem for KU. We have known that to be a problem for KU. That is why they lost at Hilton Coliseum. That is why they lost at the WVU Coliseum. They have not defended the three-point arc well enough on a consistent basis this year. That always spoke trouble about how they could potentially match up with BYU if BYU was making their shots. And last night they made their shots.
They even knew, like, all the talk was defending the three, making sure they don't get that many threes off because the percentage. We talked about this yesterday. There was nothing they could say to explain away the game yesterday besides they just didn't defend the three well enough because you have that many threes. Like Coach Self on Monday in the preview press conference kind of put it to a percentage. Like, if they hit this many, that's a percentage more than we would have to hit twos if we did this and this and whatever. And there's no way to explain it. They literally told themselves on Monday how they were going to get beat if they didn't do what they needed to do, and they didn't do it, and they got beat that way.
I was just fascinated by watching that game. It was so unpleasant to watch. It was not a particularly well played game.
Yeah.
And really, if BYU had been better, and like I don't want to dump all over BYU. They don't deserve that. BYU's fans are like so nice because that's just their nature, and they were just happy to be there in many ways. So this, I want to dump all over BYU. They're good. They're going to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
This isn't like losing. Like if KU had lost to UCF at home, I know they lost to them on the road, but the road is objectively different in this league. Losing at home to BYU, even though it's a home loss, BYU's good. Okay, they're not as athletic as the rest of the Big 12. They had to know that was going to be the case coming into the league. They were going to overcome that by making a bunch of threes, and either that was going to work or it wasn't. And credit to BYU. That has worked for them a lot better than I thought it was going to. I thought that was going to be a bottom 2 or 3 team in the league, and they're going to the NCAA tournament. Mark Pope deserves a ton of credit for that. All credit due to BYU where it is due. But KU held the door open the entire second half, and BYU almost reluctantly went through it with 3.5 minutes to go. Like, that was a game that if KU had played like that against a team with a little bit more offensively, probably lose by 15. They were so miserable. And BYU, to their credit, again, defensively, KU was obviously uncomfortable on offense in the second half, but there were still enough good looks that should have gone in that did not. There were a couple of 3-pointers. Harris had one, Furphy had one, where the ball is halfway into the cylinder and just wouldn't stay down.
Yeah.
And so I felt like this one was more about KU than BYU. It's a bad loss because it's a home loss. Like if they lost at BYU in the same fashion,
we just explained it away with the Big 12 is hard to play on the road, like we've seen all season.
Exactly. That would not be a bad loss if it happened at the Marriott Center, but it's not a great loss because it happened at home. It's just remarkable to look at this team and see they beat Kentucky in a neutral site. They beat Tennessee at a neutral site. They beat UConn, who I believe is the best team in the country. They beat UConn. They have good wins in this league. They beat up Houston. They just beat Houston. They beat up Houston, who I think is the second best team in the country right now. They beat up Houston at Allen Fieldhouse. They've beaten Baylor. They went on the road and got a win at Oklahoma.
As good as you really think they are, though? Yes. I mean, they've had some losses.
They have, but I still think they're a top 10, 15 team in the country. Like, they've got a bunch of future pros. That's a good win. Like, Kentucky's not 2012 Kentucky, but I like their backcourt of Reed Shepherd and Rob Dillingham as much as I like anybody's backcourt in the entire country. It's just a matter of playing those two guys together and letting them cook. And John Calipari doesn't do that often enough for my taste. But I think that's a good team. Like, I think Kentucky's really good. And it wouldn't shock me if they made a deep NCAA tournament run. So that is the enigma that is KU. They have some of the best wins in the country, and they have some of the most inexplicable losses in the country. Their ceiling, I firmly believe, still exists at a pretty high level, especially if there's any chance of getting Kevin McCullough back for the NCAA tournament. It's just that we're not used to seeing the floor be this low for Kansas, because even the Kansas teams that have been below the standard that they've set over the last 30 years, those teams should have won at UCF. Those teams would have won at West Virginia. Those teams would have won that game last night against BYU. Yeah. And in a vacuum, again, you look at the BYU game, they just didn't make shots. You look at the UCF game, Dickinson was playing hurt, they didn't make shots. West Virginia shot the bejesus out of the basketball, and that's how they pulled that upset. Iowa State, who's a top 10 team in the country, KU lost that game by 4 because Trey King shot like Steph Curry for 40 minutes. Like, there has been some anomalous stuff that has happened to KU in their losses, but 6 losses in conference play just doesn't happen to the Kansas Jayhawks. Yeah. And here we are with 2, I would say, probable losses left on the schedule. So if I'm looking at this from the KU perspective, they are frustrating this year in a way, I guess, if I had to land on it. And I see that frustration. We got Clayton in the YouTube comment says, not just the home loss, they've been playing subpar, extremely inconsistent all year. Like, I get that perspective. If you're a KU fan, you've got to be as frustrated with this team as you've maybe been with any KU team in recent memory, even more so than some of those teams like the 2021 team or the 2019 team.
He also said previous, KU is a total joke this year.
Well, yeah, again, frustrating. That's the kind of thing you say when you're frustrated, right?
Yeah.
Like, I get it. You're frustrated with this basketball team. And they can flip the narrative if they can go to Waco and win. If they win out in the league, then they're going to feel, they'll feel really good. They're going to get their 2 seed. I think they'll at least get a 3, even worst case scenario, end up with a 3 seed and go into Omaha for the first round of the tournament. But yeah, it feels like the floor is lower. It just doesn't feel like the ceiling is quite as high without McCullough, and that the floor is lower, and that they might be more ripe to suffer a first round upset this year than maybe they've been in more recent years in the NCAA tournament, because that was a baffling loss. And if you had to sit on your couch last night and listen to the microphone sound like it was underwater for 5 seconds at a time, and listen to Debbie Antonelli on color commentary, then I can only imagine how frustrating that experience was for you personally if you were a KU fan last night. Got to flush it, because you got to try and get something out of this week. And it's not going to come easily at the Foster Pavilion in Waco.
Hey, I have some breaking show news before we hit the break.
We have show news?
Yeah, we have show news.
What's that?
We told you our problems for the last week, and at the beginning of this hour, shout out to our engineer, Roy. We now have a text line back, 785-272-9429.
Hey, how
Send
about
us
that?
your text.
Text line is back. Be our guinea pig. 785-272-9429. The text line is back. The YouTube stream, the live chat is hopping. Appreciate you guys chiming in on the YouTube stream as always. We're going to take a quick break on the show. We'll come back, play a little One Gotta Go on 580 Sports Talk. A round of one got to go on this edition of 580 Sports Talk. Dan and Spencer hanging out with you. Spencer, you said you had one earlier that was Chiefs related or NFL related at least. So hit me with it. What do you got?
Yeah. So a lot of news here about the Chiefs recently.
Yeah.
When it comes to players, the offseason, we talked last week kind of at lengths about players on expiring contracts, and then we see the money with the salary cap. So one Chief player you wouldn't mind losing this offseason, whether via free agency or a tag and trade, either Chris Jones, L'Jarius Sneed, Mike Edwards, or Drew Tranquill.
So one of those doesn't come back.
Yes.
Is it all things being equal, or is it based on their, what their value to the salary cap, what it might cost to keep them factored in here?
That.
Okay. I don't know. Like, just in terms of the caliber of player, I think Mike Edwards is probably the easy answer there. And that's no disrespect to Edwards, who I think was immense at times this year and made a lot of big plays for the Chiefs. But I think that's a guy with Shamari Connor making strides, with Brian Cook coming back from his injury. That's the guy you could probably most easily replace just in-house without doing anything else. Sneed might be second on that list. You're definitely keeping Jones. I really like what Tranquill brings. Keeping him too. It's between the two defensive backs, and like I said, talent-wise, definitely Edwards. But in terms of what it might cost, it might be cheaper to keep Edwards than it might be Sneed.
And that's why I picked Sneed, because it would be cheaper to pick Edwards over Sneed, and the depth you already have there. I kind of talked about it a little earlier with the other guys that they have in that defensive back room, with McDuffie, playing as well as he's played, that you can, you have the ability to trade Sneed.
Right.
And you could really do that.
Yeah. You the potential to get something rather than, you don't get anything if Edwards or Jones or Tranquill depart in free agency. All right. For my one got to go today. Obviously, this is a great time of year for sports fans here. You get the Super Bowl in early February, and then you have like the start of things for a lot of different sports. So I'm going to give you 4 season opening or season closing events that happen in this time frame from mid to late February to the end of the early part of April, and you can only go to one of them. So this is kind of a reverse one got to go. The Daytona 500, the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. I'm talking experience in person. Spring training, the Masters. You can only go to one of them. Which one are you going to?
Probably the NCAA tournament.
Okay.
Because at the Masters, you never know with the weather outside.
This is true. Any of the outdoors ones, it could
and
be
if
spoiled.
I go to my team spring training in Florida, there'd probably be a lot of rain.
Sure.
And the Daytona 500 is the Daytona 500, but like I've never been to an NCAA tournament before.
Okay.
So that's my reasoning for choosing it.
So
like of all of them, I'd want to go to an NCAA, like even though I wouldn't have a team in the fight necessarily, probably.
So I've done the NCAA tournament both as a fan and as a member of the media. It does rule. I've done spring training as a fan. That is also awesome. So it's between the Masters and Daytona for me. I have friends who've done the Masters. They say it's super cool. Jake LeBon, our former co-host, he did the Masters.
That's a no phone event, right?
Yeah, you gotta leave your phone.
I don't know if I could do that. I'm a big FOMO guy. As much as I'm not on Twitter,
be on Twitter all day, that'd be hard. Yeah,
we have this running joke about being on Twitter and stuff. I just the FOMO aspect. I don't know if I could be without my phone all day.
I'm more of a golf person than a motorsports person, so I'd probably lean Augusta. Also, the chance to like do multiple days, even though that's not really how it works with the raffle there. But I'd happily do any of those 4 at any time. Maybe it's more achievable. There's no lottery on the Daytona 500 tickets. You just got to buy them. The Masters can't have to get lucky. We're going to take a break here on 580 Sports Talk. That was one got to go. Damon Parker, coach of Washburn Rural Girls Wrestling, joins us as our Lewis Toyota High School Athletes of the Week continue next on 580 Sports Talk. 3:40 on 580 Sports Talk, and it's time for part 2 of our Lewis Toyota High School Athletes of the Week this week. For the 4th time in 5 years, the Washburn Rural girls wrestling team took home the state championship. Their head coach is Damon Parker, and I had the pleasure of speaking with him earlier this week. Here is that conversation.
Our Lewis Toyota High School Athletes of the Week this week are the area's state championship girls wrestling teams, and for the 4th time in 5 years, Washburn Rural's girls are state wrestling champions. They go back-to-back in Class 6A, bringing home another banner, and their head coach is Damon Parker. And Damon, it never gets old, I'm sure, being able to discuss a state championship winning team. And we'll get into everything that went into winning the title and your girls' performances throughout the year and in the state tournament, to be precise. But I have to start with the bananas. I want to know where that comes from, because when I see your team, their social media presence, it's always bananas. Why the bananas?
Well, we kind of go bananas in our program anyway, but it started a few years back. One of my brothers and I had always talked about, like, when they first started girls wrestling in 2020. I remember him asking me, do you think you guys are good enough to win the whole banana, like win the championship? And I was like, I don't know, man. Like, there's so many unknowns. And then we won it. I get home, and then there's some bananas on my front porch. And then they just kept coming and coming and coming. And that first year, I think we ended up with 700-800 bananas. People just ordering them from the grocery stores and having them delivered to our house. And I had no idea who they were coming from, because we had kind of talked that year about winning the whole banana. And then there was a news story, I think, on WIBW that kind of caught fire nationally. And now every year when we win the championship, I can just expect to have some bananas on the front porch when we get back.
Those go into smoothies, banana splits. What is your preferred method of banana consumption?
Well, we have what is one of the weirdest and best traditions in sports, which actually happened this morning. Once the shipments kind of start to slow down, take my 2 kids. I've got 11-year-old twins who are huge programs supporters. And I put on my banana costume. They put on their banana hats. And we go over to the high school and we just pass out a banana to every single human being that we see. And this year I think it was a record. We counted 1,288 bananas and went up there and passed them all out, passed them around our neighborhood, and just trying to get rid of these things. Because I don't know if you can visualize what 1,200 bananas looks like, but it's a lot of bananas. And so there's no way to make it through those. I don't have a freezer big enough to hold them all.
Well, Damon, the reason I start with the bananas is because I see that on social media, on your team's Twitter account. And when I think about your team, I think about that social media presence, because it is very clear that in a sport where I think a lot of people picture wrestling as grim and determined and steely-eyed competitors in the center of the mat, mano-a-mano, one-on-one, it seems as though your program is having more fun than anyone else. And I want to know where that comes from, where the culture of having a blast comes from, because that seems to be the thing that, from my perspective, outside at least, just really permeates your wrestling program.
Yeah, and you can still kind of take that grr approach if you want to. I know that that's what the majority of people do, and to each their own. We've always tried to make a career out of doing things differently here. When we first got here, and we knew that we had a long way to go, and we weren't going to be able to catch the Manhattans and Junction Cities and Derbies of the world by out-athleting them. We knew we had to do things a little bit different, and I've just kind of made a whole career out of doing everything a little bit different. And it's especially with girls wrestling, but it's not unique to girls wrestling either. Like, we took that same approach towards the end of when I was coaching the boys as well. We try to make it something that people want to be a part of. And, every year I have coaches that ask, how do you get so many girls out every year? And we tell them, hey, you can't coach it like you would coach the boys. It's same rules, same uniform, same mat space, completely different universe. And B, I don't coach a wrestling team. I coach a massively happy learning organization. That's something that kids want to be a part of. And I think if you do that, then the kids start coming to you and you don't have to recruit quite as much. And plus, it makes it a heck of a lot easier on the coaches. Like, wrestling it's a grueling sport, man. You're not wrong about that. And if you can do something that that makes it so the kids are having fun every day, then the coaches have a lot more fun too. And then everybody just becomes a little bit better at their job. And I think the coolest thing about this last weekend is if you go back and look at some of those pictures, not after the matches, but during the matches, the vast majority of our girls are smiling. And it's not just when they're winning. We had a girl that, somebody snapped a picture right after she attempted some throw, and she just landed flat on her back, made the whole crowd go, ooh. And our photographer zoomed in. She was able to belly down out of that and not get pinned. Zoomed in and took a picture, and she's just grinning ear to ear. It was just like, well, that didn't work, but at least I got off my back, And so we just try to take that approach of having a great time with what we're doing, because that's how you keep kids out, and that's how you get kids involved in the first place.
Damon Parker's the head coach of the Washburn Rural girls wrestling team, state champions in Class 6A, our Lewis Toyota High School Athletes of the Week. Another thing that is exceptional about your program is the depth on display year over year. You have not had an individual state champion the last 2 years, but you've got team state championships in each of those years. This year in particular, you had to develop that depth as you went along because you had some injuries to some returning state placers and state qualifiers coming back to this year's team. How were you able to develop that depth, and how did the girls embrace the challenge of going into a state tournament and maybe not being the favorite in their weight class, but knowing if I wrestle well, I'm going to score for my team and give my team a chance to do something special?
That's what it's all about, man. I think where a lot of folks miss the mark, if they look at wrestling as an individual sport where they keep team score, and that ain't it, man. Wrestling is a team sport that has a small individual aspect. And I've told the kids before, I was fortunate enough to win a couple of state championships individually when I was in high school. And I was never fortunate enough to be a part of a team state championship. And I would have taken both of those brackets and thrown them in the trash can for the opportunity to win it as a team, because there's just so much more reward that comes with everybody working towards something together. And so, we would certainly love to have some individual state champs, and that will absolutely happen. And we've had them in the past. We just haven't for the last couple of years. That is so far down the totem pole of things that are important. It's about having a good time. It's about creating memories together, and again, working towards a common goal with people that you care about.
I do want to ask about your one wrestler who did reach a final. Molly Spader, as a junior, ended up taking second at 105 pounds. Tell me a little bit about the season she had, the state tournament that she had, and how important a performance like hers was.
Gosh, man, what a leader she is. She shows everybody on the team what they need to be doing in the mat room, out of the mat room, in the classroom. She just gets it done, man. She is as foundationally solid as any wrestler that I've ever coached. And that includes our boys. She is just never in a bad position. And that's not something that happens by accident. That's something that comes from years and years and years of doing that work in the dark that nobody else really sees. And when Molly got to the finals, that's one of the frustrating things about our sport with no opportunity for replay. It is really difficult when trying to come up with something to say to a kid when she does everything that she needs to do to win a state championship, and then some decisions made by other people make it so that that's not possible. And it was very frustrating for her, I know, but I know that Molly, being the person she is, she took it a lot better than I did, because I wasn't very happy with a couple of calls that were made there, and I don't think that's any secret to anybody that was there in attendance. But there's nothing that we can do about that now. We talk a lot about in our program. Things aren't always going to be sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes things don't go your way, but we can always learn from experience like that, and I'm included in that as well. I learned from that this weekend too. And when you saw, fast forward an hour from when that match happened, and you saw Molly go be the one to pick up that team state title trophy, and you see the pictures of her holding that thing the minute she picks it up, I don't think she even remembered that she had a state finals match. She just remembered that all of this work that we've been putting in over the last 4 months and the time before that, it all came to fruition for them. So.
Your wrestlers all have unique stories in every performance. Every wrestler on the mat at a state championship has a story. But I want to hone in on another one here real quick. The story of freshman Cameron Clark at 100 pounds, the number 16 seed, beats the number 1 seed
in round one. Tell me about seeing a freshman do that and what that does for the rest of your wrestlers and what that means, again, for laying a foundation for a program moving forward to have a performance like that from a freshman at state.
Well, just to clarify for any of your listeners who might not be wrestling people, this was the biggest upset I have ever seen in any sport, not just in wrestling. I have never in my entire life seen a 16 knock off a number one in wrestling. It just doesn't happen, especially a 16 seed who was a first-year wrestler who beat the number one ranked wrestler in the state. And it wasn't with smoke and mirrors either. She went to one of our textbook techniques and was able to get the job done. And the nice thing about wrestling is, versus other sports, if you're down by 14 points with 30 seconds left in basketball or football, like, good luck to you. Like, it's probably not going to work out real well. But in wrestling, we tell them as long as there are 2 seconds left on the clock, you are still in the fight. And we harp really big on, I swiped these from Bill Snyder, but the 16 goals, and number 13 on that list is expect to win and truly believe that you will. And it doesn't matter what the score is. Expect to win and truly believe you will. And she got a reversal. I think she was down 13-0. And she got a reversal in the third period. So that's 13-2. And then she's like, okay, now it's my turn. She turned that girl to her back, got a pin, and it just blew the roof off the place. And that just sent the message to the rest of the state of Kansas that Washburn Rural is here. And I don't care where you put us in the rankings, we are not going to go away. And Cameron set that tone and sent that message right off the bat. And couldn't be more proud of him, because I don't think we would have had the team accomplishment that we did this last weekend had she not gotten us started the correct way.
Last question for you, Damon Parker, as we honor the girls wrestling team at Washburn Rural, the 6A state champions, as our Lewis Toyota Athletes of the Week. Every banner, every trophy, every team photograph is different than the ones that come before it and the ones that come after it. When you think back about this particular season of Washburn Rural girls wrestling, 5, 10, 20 years from now, when these girls have moved on to do whatever it is that they do in their lives, what will you remember most? What will stand out when somebody says that 2024 championship team, what was special about them?
Josh, man, just the battle through adversity. And I think I told somebody from the paper last week, this team repeating as team champs with the pieces that we were missing due to injury. That would be like pulling Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan off the Bulls and expecting them to repeat, because we were missing 65 team points that we expected to have on the roster this year. 65. That's more than if you go down, I think, to about number 7 in the state, everybody else scored 65 points or less. And so to miss that many points and still find a way to get this thing done, even when it wasn't one of our goals. We never have win a state championship as one of our goals. We're trying to get better every single day. We're trying to develop strong relationships and develop a love for each other, because, state championships, that last for a minute. I bet most of the kids have forgotten about it by now. Okay? But those relationships, those last a lifetime, man. And that's what we really try to focus on. And I will remember how this team came together. The other thing that I will remember more than anything is the phenomenal job that our assistant coaching staff did this year. I know they give out a Kansas Assistant Coaching Staff of the Year award. And if this crew doesn't win it, then they need to blow up that award. Because with Dwayne Zlatnick and Sebastian Couple, Jesse Stonebreaker, Lindsey Parker, Daniel Reeling's active duty military, he got shipped off right after regionals, and he's on his base sending us scouting reports. Jesse Stonebreaker was pregnant the entire season, had her baby right after the league tournament, and at regionals, she's sitting in the corner with a baby strapped to her chest. And we took these coaches and we assigned them certain kids, and it was like, we need you to really get to know these wrestlers as individuals and as wrestlers, and we need to come up with game plans that are specific for each one of them if we're even going to have an outside chance of bringing home a third place finish. And with the work that those coaches did, I have never seen a coaching staff that worked as hard and was as dedicated as this one was this year. And so, if I had a couple things that I was going to remember 20 years from now, it would be, the relationships that these teams developed and the work that this assistant coaching staff put in, because they aren't the coaches of the year. They're the coaches of the century.
The Washburn Rural Junior Blues girls wrestling team, state champions in Class 6A for 2024. Their head coach is Damon Parker, and we speak with him to honor the rural girls wrestlers as our Lewis Toyota High School Athletes of the Week. Damon, it is truly always a pleasure. Congratulations on another championship for you and your program. And I wouldn't rule out talking to you again this time next year, because what you've done and what those girls have done and put into this program is nothing short of outstanding. Thank you for your time.
I appreciate the time, Dan. Thanks. Go Blues.
That's Damon Parker. He's a one-on-one. He's one of the very best coaches in any sport in this area and in our state. And it is always such a joy to talk with him. Thank you to him for his time, the Lewis Toyota High School Athletes of the Week. Clark Hunt got an F- from his players. That and more from the NFLPA grades coming up as we start the 4 o'clock hour after this on 580 Sports Talk. Let's get it. Hour number 3 on this Wednesday edition of 580 Sports Talk. Hope you're enjoying this chilly Wednesday as winter descended upon us within the last 24 hours. It'll be gone in the next 24 hours, so we got that to look forward to.
Gotta love it.
Hope you're staying warm and enjoying your Wednesday, and we appreciate you hanging out with us, whether you're listening on 580 WIBW, FM 104.9, online at 580WIBW.com, or on our video stream, which you can find on our YouTube channel, 580 Sports Talk, on our Twitter account, 580 Sports Talk, or our Facebook account, WIBW News. However you're consuming the show, thanks for hanging out with us on this edition of the program. I am Dan Lucero. Spencer Dupuis is across the glass. Brendan Dworzynski is in Joplin, Missouri with Washburn basketball. They tip off in a little less than an hour and a half.
I would hope he's there now.
He should be there by now. Now, I usually like to get to the gym about an hour to an hour and a half before, depending on where I'm going, how far out I have to go. Am I familiar with the setup? All those things. So I would assume Brendan's probably in Joplin by now. Washburn basketball tonight on our sister station, Classic Country 106.9. Women tip at 5:30. Men to follow. Pregame at 5:15. Thanks again to our Lewis Toyota Athletes of the Week guests from today's show. We talked to Bryce Gfeller, head girls wrestling coach at Rossville at 2:45 today. We just heard from Damon Parker, the head girls wrestling coach at Washburn Rural. 2 great interviews. I love talking to wrestling people. I don't have any real background myself in the sport. It was not a sport that I grew up in. It was not a sport I ever participated in. But I have said this over and over and over again, that nobody loves their sport like wrestling people love wrestling. And I love talking to people who are passionate about whatever it is that they do. And few people are more passionate than wrestling people. And Damon Parker might be the most passionate wrestling person that I've ever talked to. And so enjoyed talking with him, enjoyed talking with Bryce. Those interviews up on our podcast page, 580 WIBW. You can hover over the podcast tab, find 580 Sports Talk, hour-by-hour breakdowns of the show. You can rewind the video stream if you'd like to catch up on those interviews, or just catch the archive later on tonight if you missed either of those conversations. I would be remiss if I did not mention Christian Marshall, Brody Byrne, and Easton Brocksterman of Washburn Rural, and Riken Carver of Shawnee Heights individual boys state wrestling championships, won by those 4 gentlemen last weekend, and a hearty congratulations to them. It was just a wonderful weekend for wrestling in the city and in Shawnee County, and a salute to all of those wrestlers is in order for our Lewis Toyota Athletes of the Week. Coming up later this hour, Tim Fitzgerald will join us from GoPowerCat.com, our Wildcat Wrap-Up. K-State basketball has won 2 on the bounce as they try to keep their NCAA tournament hopes alive. We'll get a look back at those wins, a look ahead to their game against Cincinnati on Saturday, and much, much more. All kinds of shenanigans when Fitz joins us. So, also coming up this hour, the semifinals of February. What is wrong with you? We've got a play-in match. We've got 2 semifinals. We're going to get somehow 5 really good stories from this month down to 2. It will be tough. There may be some bloodshed. There may be some tears, but we are going to get down to 2 stories on what is wrong with you and conduct our February final tomorrow. We invite you to participate in the show. The YouTube stream has a live chat option. It has been active today. We appreciate everybody who is commenting and keeping the discussion going over on the YouTube live chat. You can also jump in on that on Twitter or on the Facebook stream if you're watching that way. We are also back in business on the text line, 785-272-9429. I want you to put the word out there that we back up.
Yeah. We've already gotten a text message asking me a question.
Yes. You were asked about chili and cinnamon rolls.
That's a new one to me. Had not heard of that.
It was a new one to me before I moved to Nebraska. I don't know if it's more than a Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, and all points north thing. Like, I don't know if Missouri gets down with chili and cinnamon rolls. I don't know if Oklahoma or Texas does chili and cinnamon rolls. I just know where I grew up, they didn't. And now I live in a place that does. And I have still never tried it because I am a coward, I guess. I don't know. You can call me that if you want. One day I will consume a bowl of chili and a cinnamon roll. That day is not today, but one day. Because I like both things. I really like cinnamon rolls. I just never fathomed them tasting good together. Where do you come down? We know you like chili. Where do you come down on cinnamon rolls? Cinnamon rolls, thumbs up?
Yes.
Okay. So then you'll probably like the combination.
No, I'm a cinnamon rolls are either a dessert or breakfast food, and chili is part of a meal in your lunch, dinner, or a snack. It's like hearty meats and then sugar.
Well, that's the thing. It's the savory and then the
I don't
sweet.
like
That's the combination. That's the idea behind it. So yeah. I've been wary of it too, and I've lived in the Midwest a lot longer than you have. So obviously, I've been ducking the challenge. But one day, we will do it. But we start this 4:00 hour with the NFLPA's team-by-team report cards. For the second straight year, the NFL Players Association made public the result of league-wide surveys. Team or players throughout the league were asked to evaluate the teams that they played on in a variety of different categories. The categories this year were expanded from last year's inaugural survey. They added a few more categories this year, but players were asked to evaluate how their teams perform in the following categories: treatment of families, food/cafeteria, nutritionist/dietitian, locker room, training staff, weight room, strength coaches, team travel, head coach, and ownership. The teams are then ranked, given essentially a grade point average, and are ranked out of 32. And the two-time defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs come in at number 31 out of 32 teams in this survey. Here's the overview from the write-up, and you can go see this. This isn't proprietary stuff. You can go read this for yourself. NFLPA.com has published these report cards for all 32 teams. So you can read about the Chiefs. You can read about your favorite team. You can read about your least favorite team. There's some really funny stuff in there. The Chargers apparently charge their players for daycare, which is wild. Which team was it? Oh, the Chargers also feeding their team some really nasty food. Nobody liked playing for Bill Belichick or Josh McDaniels. Like, there's lots of really good gossipy stuff in here. But the Chiefs do not come out well in this survey. And it's the second straight year they don't really come out well, as they were one of the bottom teams in last year's survey. Here is the overview as published by the NFLPA. The Kansas City Chiefs come in second to last place among NFL clubs. The one bright spot for the team is head coach Andy Reid, the highest-rated head coach in the NFL. Hell yeah, Big Red. Shout out to Andy Reid. Other than that, the players are frustrated by their workplace offerings, especially after the team's sustained success in recent years. The responses identify major issues in two areas: quality of care and out-of-date facilities. The number one complaint when it comes to the facilities is the locker room. Though the players received actual chairs with backs to sit in at their lockers in response to last year's feedback, it did not change the fact that the locker room is overdue for a renovation. What adds to the frustration is that management told players renovations would come after the 2022 season. The players went on to win the Super Bowl, and when they arrived back at their facility for this season, they realized the team never followed through with the promised renovation other than adding chairs. Now, there's been some misunderstanding about what locker room is being talked about. The Chiefs did recently redo the home locker room at Arrowhead Stadium. These complaints are in relation to the locker room at the team facility at One Arrowhead Drive. The players' issue with quality of care is mostly centered around the training room. We're back to the report card here. The players feel that the training room is significantly understaffed, with only 43% of the team responding that they get an adequate amount of one-on-one treatment time. Players feel that the staff is unwilling to provide the necessary treatment to support recovery and performance. For example, players are not allowed to get preventative treatment for soreness and day-to-day issues, a regular offering across the NFL. From the results, it is clear that there has not been a significant reinvestment back into the facilities, even after consistent success. That has led to a high level of frustration among player respondents and reflects in club owner Clark Hunt's ranking as the least willing to invest in team facilities among all NFL owners or ownership groups, in the opinions of the respondents. I want to ask you a question, Spencer. If you handed your parents a report card that read D+, C-, F, D, F, C+, C+, D, A+, F-, how long would you have been grounded?
For the remainder of the school year?
That might have been a lifetime of grounding for
I gotta
me.
say something though.
I would
ownership. I'm used to seeing this F-, 32nd ranked in the league for my favorite team, the Commanders.
Right.
This survey was done, I think, between either September or August through November, right?
Mm-hmm.
So not really a fair amount of time to judge Josh Harris.
Right, the new owners.
Yeah, but he's basically halfway in the league, like halfway mark. They've given him the benefit of the doubt, and knowing he did none of this, and knowing that he's trying to do his best to make a plan to get better in all these categories.
So you're off the hook.
Yeah.
And now Clark Hunt ranks dead last as far as ownership. Hunt received a rating of 4.9 out of 10 from Chiefs players when considering his willingness to invest in the facilities. It is one thing to give somebody an F. When you give them an F-, that feels personal. That minus might as well be a middle finger, right? That minus is kind of a screw you, I feel like. And again, the evaluation here is only in relation to how willing the owner is to invest in the team. So this is not a reflection necessarily of like an in-person interaction with Clark Hunt. Clark Hunt may be an entirely pleasant human being. The players may get along with him on a personal level. He may treat the players on a face-to-face basis in a very kind and polite way. I wouldn't doubt that. But this is about willingness to spend money. And it has been well known, or at least well alleged over the years. Well, let me put it this way. If you've seen the movie Moneyball, if you're familiar with that film, Brad Pitt, the one about the one where he plays Billy Beane, the Oakland A's general manager, based on the Michael Lewis book, there's the line in Moneyball where I think it's David Justice's, the character, David Justice, is at the soda machine, and he can't believe that he presses a button and it doesn't just come out. He has to pay for his own soft drinks in the clubhouse. And he asked Jonah Hill's character about that. And I believe what Jonah Hill says to the actor playing David Justice is, Billy likes to keep the money on the field. And I sort of feel like that is something you could say about the Hunt family. The Hunt family likes to keep the money on the field because the Hunts have obviously not cheaped out on putting together a championship caliber roster. They have not cheaped out on Patrick Mahomes' contract. They have not cheaped out on the coaching staff. But have they maybe cheaped out on like comfortable chairs in the locker room or team travel arrangements or training facilities? I could see players maybe feeling like things are a little bit more Spartan in that regard at One Arrowhead Drive. It is not new for a low grade for the training staff. Last year, and I was looking at the grades, last year, chief strength coaches got an A-. This year, they dropped to a C+, which is kind of eye-opening. The weight room got the same grade year over year, a C+. Food service and nutrition ranked pretty low each of the last 2 years. They've spread that category out a little bit. It was just one category last year. They got a D-. This year, a C- in food, an F in nutritionist. So, on balance, probably about a D+. So, no change there. Team travel actually got better. They got an F for travel last year. This year, they got a D. Apparently, the flights, they're using a plane with a little bit more room this year. But they are still one of only a handful of teams that request that players have roommates on the road. Andy Reid's been in the game a long time. That's kind of feels like an old school flourish.
Old school, yeah.
Yeah, for me. Locker room was a D- last year. It's an F this year. Training staff was a D-, dead last in the league last year. They are an F this year, dead last in the league again. when we discussed this last year when this came out, it really took us a little bit off guard because we hear lots of great things about Rick Burkholder. In the wake of getting Patrick Mahomes ready to play in the playoffs last year after he suffered that sprained ankle against Jacksonville in the divisional round, there was all kinds of praise for the training staff, for the work of Rick Burkholder and the rest of that staff in regards to making sure Mahomes in particular was ready to play. This is where it is probably important to note two things. Number one, this is 77% of the league filling this out. And if you are, let's say, really upset and really disgruntled, you are probably more inclined to give a nasty grade than if you really haven't had to deal much with a team's training staff because you're a healthy player, or you haven't had to worry too much about your own injury rehab, and you think, yeah, those guys, they're fine. I'll give a B. It's sort of like online reviews, right? Like you go read a Yelp review or you go read a customer review at Amazon, and not many people are going to write like a real detailed 4-star review, right? But those 1-star reviews, man, you get something and it breaks, or you go to a restaurant, there's a hair in your soup, man, you had the bad experience. That may not be the broad experience, but it was so negative for you that you napalmed their Yelp review.
I never thought the Commanders and the Chiefs would be so close together when it came to things. Training room, Chiefs ranked 31st, Commanders ranked 32nd. What else here? I accidentally went away, clicked away from it. Training staff, the Commanders are 31st. Training staff, the Chiefs are 32nd. And I believe team travels right around the same notch. Yeah, so they're pretty similar teams according to the NFL survey.
Yeah, treatment of families.
The locker rooms are about the same.
Treatment of families got worse for the Chiefs this year. They got a B in that category last year. That tied for 12th in the league. This year they got a D+, but that was 18th in the league. The note here from the NFLPA, a number of players want daycare to be offered on site, which would make it much more convenient for their families. Like, there are some teams that don't provide daycare. There are some teams that charge their players for daycare, like the Chargers. Literally, that's what they do.
Yeah.
That is an interesting complaint and an interesting drop in the grade for the Chiefs. J.C. Tretter spoke with the media about this on a conference call earlier today. And Jesse Newell, friend of the program, Chiefs beat writer for the Kansas City Star, asked Tretter in particular about the Chiefs' grade. And what Tretter really stressed in his answer was the frustration felt by the players over not getting the promised upgrade to their facility locker room after 2022. Tretter said, and this is coming from Newell's Twitter account, at Jesse Newell, Tretter said players were told that the Chiefs played too long in the playoffs in 2022, so the team didn't have time to fix the locker room. Yeah, that would hack me off too. If I were a player and I heard, oh, we just didn't have the time. Yeah, BS. You're lying. You're lying to me. Tretter's direct quote from the, or paraphrase quote at least from the conference call, I think there's some frustration there in the room. We keep winning Super Bowls and nothing's coming back to us. There's no priority on making our lives better. I am sympathetic to comments like the one from the Jayhawker on our YouTube live chat, where he says, my heart bleeds for millionaire players who want a 5-star hotel for a locker room. Look, I understand. I totally get that. I am absolutely sympathetic to a comment like that. The last thing you want to hear if you are a fan, particularly maybe if you are a fan and, you know, maybe you got something, maybe your water heater's struggling at your house. Maybe you're having trouble keeping the hot water on. Maybe your AC or your gas furnace has been on the fritz. Maybe you could use a new roof or some new windows in your home. And here are the Chiefs upset that all we got were nicer chairs in our facility and we didn't get the promised upgrades. And I get if that doesn't sit right. I totally understand. And again, this survey is done entirely anonymously. We have no idea which players are the most upset about this. We have no idea which players don't care at all about this. We don't even know which players filled this out. But I do think that rings a little frustrating to hear. Well, we want better facilities. We want a better. We need a nicer locker room. Well, you're doing all right with the locker room you've got, right? There is an element of be blessed with what you have. Clearly, it's adequate to go about the business of winning a championship. At the same time, I think Clark Hunt getting an F- is something
It's a little alarming.
that, to me personally, if I were being evaluated, it doesn't matter what it's about necessarily. If I were being evaluated on something and I got an F-, that would jolt me back to a different kind of reality. That would be something that I would take a little bit personally. And hopefully that's personally in the way that, okay, maybe we ought to spend a little bit more money on making sure that we get, maybe update some training facilities, maybe update an extra cold tub or something like that, something to at least make the players, because you want your employees to feel listened to. That's not nothing. But at the same time, yeah, I get that when these evaluations come out, the last thing that fans want to hear is complaints that, the locker room's not fancy enough. Well, fancy enough to win a Super Bowl with. That should be good enough, right? We're going to take a break here on 580 Sports Talk. We got to get into our What Is Wrong With You semifinals before we talk to Tim Fitzgerald to GoPowerCat.com. Stay with us. The What Is Wrong With You semifinals for the month of February next on 580 WIBW. Our What Is Wrong With You February semifinals are brought to you by Top City Metal Supply, who cuts the metal you need to your specifications, saving time, money, and material. Never settle when it comes to metal. Top City Metal Supply on South Topeka Boulevard, halfway between Frito-Lay and Forbes Field. We had 2 short weeks, and the short week champions compete in our play-in match. That includes this week's winner. That's 36-year-old Camilla Grabska, who filed a lawsuit claiming $800,000 in damages after she claimed a car crash left her unable to work. That was before they found photographic evidence that crash did not leave her unable to win a Christmas tree throwing contest. It's very funny also that in the picture, her leggings read, "I just can't." But she very much could, because she won the Christmas tree throwing championship. She's the overall ladies winner. There's a picture of her with the plaque and everything. Her lawsuit was thrown out. She faces what we call the airplane potty emergency. 60-year-old Dulce Huertas pulled her pants down on a Frontier Airlines flight. She got a little tipsy off of 2 alcoholic drinks, tried to go to the bathroom as the plane was landing. They wouldn't let her do that, get up out of her seat. So she got up as soon as the plane landed. And when they continued to block her access to the restroom, she just pulled down her pants in front of everybody and took a squat and tried to relieve herself in the aisle of the airplane. We got to pick a winner. I lean funny over gross, and insurance fraud to me is funnier than a drunk woman.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just the pure fact that she did all this, but didn't try to keep a low profile about all of it.
In no way did she attempt to keep a low profile. There's pictures of her throwing the Christmas tree.
Yeah, that's got to be the winner between those two.
Somebody said it was like something you'd see in a smash cut in like an Arrested Development episode. I don't know if you ever watched that show, but no, that made me laugh really hard. So she moves on to the semifinals, where she faces Cocaine Business Cards. 30-year-old Syed Amir Razavi in Calgary. He had 2 gigs, a chauffeur and a cocaine dealer. And he posted up outside a casino and handed out his business card with a fake name, his occupation of driver, and his contact information. And he stapled a sample of his other occupation, cocaine, to the business cards. Police naturally used the contact information on the card to set up surveillance for an entire month, and then arrested him, charging him with 2 counts of trafficking a controlled substance, 1 count of possession for the purpose of trafficking, and 3 counts of possession of proceeds of crime under $5,000. Who you got?
I think that one.
I love the cocaine business cards.
Like, how dumb can you be?
Like, there's got to be a better way to advertise your wares if your wares are cocaine.
Yeah.
Probably not attaching them to your phone number or your social media. That would probably be the way to go. So Cocaine Business Cards is one of our finalists. Our other semifinal, we have in one corner, the Simp Thief, the guy who stole some statues out of a front yard and gave them to his ex-girlfriend, 33-year-old Anthony Lewis in Winter Haven, Florida. He did it as a gift for his ex for Valentine's Day, stealing 2 crane statues out of a woman's front yard and presenting them to his ex. No word on whether or not he or his ex got back together, but Lewis, who has 39 previous burglary and theft charges, was arrested. He takes on a story I have decided to call, he took the antique items and he wrecked them. It's our guy Michael Vest, 60-year-old gentleman from Texas, arrested after he visited 2 different antique shops, took things from the shelves, stuck them beneath his kilt and up his rectum, and then put them back on the shelves. With respect to the thief.
Yeah.
Man put stuff in his butt.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that is enough said. So our final is set. Cocaine Business Cards, and he took the antiques and he wrecked them. Those are going to be... He did. He made them unavailable. You couldn't resell them. He did. He wrecked them.
I just think the whole funniest part of the story is he did it, and then he took them out and put them back on the shelf.
Put them back on the shelf. Psychotic behavior. Him and Cocaine Business Cards will be our championship match tomorrow for February on What Is Wrong With You. Brought to you by Top City Metal Supply. Metal cut to order when you need it. That's Top City Metal Supply, South Topeka Boulevard, halfway between Frito-Lay and Forbes Field. Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com joins us next for the Wildcat Wrap-Up on 580 Sports Talk. Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com joins us every Wednesday at this time on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline for the Wildcat Wrap-Up here on 580 Sports Talk. And Fitz, break up the Cats. 2 wins in a row for Jerome Tang's team, including another overtime win on Monday. And as long as you have no questions about how the game got to overtime, I guess you feel pretty good about it.
It's remarkable. They have won 7 overtime games this season. They've won 17 games. So, I mean, I'm just looking at this like, are you telling me that almost the majority, a big number of your wins had to go to overtime? It's crazy. That game had no business being in overtime, whether you look at it from the K-State perspective or the West Virginia perspective. That game shouldn't have been on overtime. I mean, West Virginia came back and took the lead. They barely didn't win that game, and K-State, of course, led by 22 at half, and that game should never go into overtime when you do that.
Yeah, you probably feel that way if you're both teams going into the overtime. If you're K-State, how did we let this get to overtime? If you're West Virginia, you led by 4 with a minute to go. How does that game get into overtime? But the thing that struck me, Fitz, is K-State hasn't played with a lot of those big leads this year and maybe looked it a little bit for the better part of that second half. And then when it got to a minute to go in a close game, it felt like a switch flip. It felt like K-State said, okay, we know exactly what to do now. And they played that way in overtime as well. And I think there's something to be said for the level of preparation that this team seems to have for those close game, final second type situations. It felt like they were almost more comfortable with a minute to go down 4 than they were up by 20 with 10 minutes left.
That's a great observation. I think you're exactly right. They do almost feel comfortable when they've got to, take it to the final seconds and get the victory. They seem to play their best. They seem to really execute. And that's, at the bottom end of the day, that's exactly what my problem has been with this team. They don't seem to be very locked in and crisp. Their sets aren't that great. Their passing isn't that great. Then you get into overtime and they're like, okay, we don't have any room to screw up, so we're not going to screw up. It's a strange team. It really is. I don't mean personality wise, the players, the way they get to around to how they're winning or losing games is often just really baffling and really frustrating for the fans too.
Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com is our guest here on 580 Sports Talk on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. This is the Wildcat Wrap-Up. Check out Fitz on Twitter at Life of Fitz and find him and his staff's outstanding work at GoPowerCat.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Fitz, two things have happened, I think, in the last two games that bear noting and I think have contributed to Kansas State playing better basketball. Number one, Tyler Perry is off the ball more than he has been, and Day-Day Ames has been able to do a little bit more point guard stuff. And even he's not necessarily that natural point guard in the way that, like, Marquise Noel was. And, look, everybody's going to suffer in comparison to a guy who was a third-team All-American last year. But does Tyler Perry seem a lot more comfortable to you shooting the ball now that he's getting more opportunities to catch and shoot rather than having to create?
Yeah, exactly. And it was something I know I was saying about 4 weeks ago that you need to get Day-Day on the floor to run the offense a little bit more in the half court. I don't think he's ready to take on, full court pressure as much as Tyler struggles sometimes. He's clearly the best on this team with the ball in his hand in, kind of extended court situations. Plus, he shoots free throws so well, you got to have him doing that. But I think once they get in the half court, let Day-Day run it. He had some turnovers in the second half that irked Coach Tang, and they should, because he's asking him to grow up. If this team wants to get to the postseason, if this team wants to do anything in the postseason, Day-Day's got to take another step or two this year and not wait till next, because they just don't have a veteran point guard that can run things. And, boy, he creates a couple buckets a game that are clearly, a point guard thing. A dribble and dish it back outside Arthur Kaluma, or an interior pass that, really helps his team. A couple buckets here and there along the way can be a huge difference in this conference between winning and losing in your overall record.
The other thing that has stood out to me the last two times out, I feel like the big men, particularly Will McNair, have played better, and not just in the sense of scoring more, the stuff that you can see in the box score. And McNair's been better around the rim the last two games. That's certainly true. But I just feel in terms of facilitating offense, being in the right spot, making the occasional pass to the cutter, these bigs aren't going to develop into great passers overnight, but it feels like they've just played more complete games. McNair and Gasson, the two that I think have maybe developed a little bit of chemistry in the two big lineup and are starting to figure out how to move, how to get their opportunities a little bit. What are you seeing from the big man rotation right now for K-State?
Yeah, I kind of feel like Coach Tang's just trying to find the player at the moment who won't mess up. And that's not to say that that the guys don't do good things. They do, but they both, even when they slide Gasson in there, they lose some size. I kind of like that, but he's so beaten up and, injured that it's hard to do that very often. McNair turns into a black hole. You throw the ball into him and he doesn't pass it out. I contend that's when K-State's offense often goes bad, is he just gets the ball in the post and dribbles for 10 seconds trying to get his shot up. And around him, nobody really moves. Everything just stops. And, for everything Gerald Colbert does well defensively, offensively, he isn't always finishing plays, and he's leaving a lot of balls at the rim. they both are pretty good players, but they're both far from complete, and Tang's trying to put them together into one really good big man.
And Tim, you know, I was there the other night, so I heard the post-game press conference from not only Coach Tang, but from the players. It seems like they're really trying to rally around Tyler Perry to get him to the NCAA tournament. I mean, he said there's no personal accolades on the line. He just wants to get to the 4-letter tournament. What are your thoughts on kind of that? And it seems like it's a very recent thing with them coming down the home stretch.
Well, whatever motivation you need. I would think the tournament itself is enough motivation. And that'd be pretty cool if he got that opportunity. And if he continues to play the way he has the last 2 games, they probably will get that opportunity because they're going to beat some people. You know, we all can agree that he hasn't been nearly as productive as what we thought he'd be. He hasn't worked out at the point nearly as well as Coach Tang hoped he would. You know, despite that, he's still scrapping away, and he finds ways to make big shots at big times. You know, when he's just playing and he's catching the ball and shooting the ball. And when he's doing that, he's pretty fun to watch. He's pretty relaxed. And I think just get that pressure off him. It's going to happen. They're going to get to the NCAA tournament. But I think the tournament itself would be enough motivation to light a fire under him.
We're speaking with Tim Fitzgerald, publisher of GoPowerCat.com. He joins us on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. This is Wildcat Wrap-Up on 580 Sports Talk. We do it every Wednesday at this time. Fitz, we've talked about Perry. The other big deal transfer this year for the Cats was Arthur Kaluma, and he's coming off of back-to-back excellent games as well. I wondered maybe if he had hit a bit of a wall earlier this month, but boy, he was terrific against BYU. He's the best player on the floor. Thought he was, again, really good against West Virginia on Monday night. What are you observing from Kaluma these last couple of games, and can he continue to produce at the high level that K-State needs in these final 3 regular season games?
Yeah, I mean, they need him to. He wasn't quite as good against West Virginia. I think they had guys more able to match up with him. It was a mismatch for BYU because of his length and speed, and he had 2 plays where he took the ball off the rim on the defense end of the floor and just took it the entire way to the rim on the other end of the floor, and that was really effective. He was very assertive in that game, and that's an NBA player right there. And when he gets that assertive and knows when to get his shot up, again, he's another guy that can bog down the offense by trying to hold the ball and back down and dribble it and back down, and it just doesn't end up going anywhere except exhausting and a lot of time off the shot clock. But boy, when he's that assertive and knows what he wants to do with the ball, it's a beautiful thing.
Cincinnati next up for K-State. It's a road game. First trip to play Cincinnati as a Big 12 opponent. First time seeing the Bearcats this year. They're a team obviously new to the league. They've really struggled down the stretch here this season, and their NCAA tournament hopes are kind of on life support. So 2 desperate teams, and usually you kind of lean in the direction of the home team when that's the case. But what in your mind can K-State do to get out of Fifth Third Arena with a win on Saturday?
Well, they're going to have to play much like they did with BYU, and that doesn't mean make shots, and Kaluma's amazing. They had a pretty steady effort, and they were pretty locked in that entire game. They kind of played like it was the end of the game from the very start all the way through. They just dominated BYU last weekend when they were in town, and they have that capability. Cincinnati's a team that has really come apart here. In fact, K-State, by beating the Bearcats, can pretty much assure Cincinnati will be playing on the first day of the Big 12 tournament, and K-State will not be playing on the first day. And if you want to make the NCAA tournament, winning on Saturday in Cincinnati is almost essential. I mean, you're going to put yourself in a position to either have to beat both Iowa State and Kansas, or go to Kansas City and win a whole bunch of games. That's never ideal, rarely ideal. If you want to get momentum into the NCAA tournament, is to play a bunch of games in a short period of time and wear yourself out. So, I personally think they need 3 more wins, whether, that's 2 here in the regular season to get to 9-9 and then 1 in Kansas City. They should have a favorable matchup in Kansas City against a light team in that what is essentially the second round. So they got some work to do, but they've taken the first two essential steps.
A quick thought about the women's team, Fitz. They're coming off of a loss in Lawrence on Sunday. Hard-fought game. KU came out in the end with a 3-point win. Wildcat women back in action tonight against Iowa State. Then they wrap up the regular season Saturday at Texas Tech. How realistic are the chances for K-State to play at home in the first two games of the NCAA tournament?
Well, fading if they continue to lose some games along here. Very good if they go ahead and take care of business. But again, number one need for them is to get healthy and get kind of back on track where they were at before Ioka was hurt. And if they can get back to that, this is going to be a team that'll make a lot of noise in the NCAA tournament. But boy, being a top 4 seed in a region and getting those home games are huge. And K-State's in a position to do that, and it's completely in their control. It's up to them.
Last thing I want to touch on today as we speak with Tim Fitzgerald, GoPowerCat.com, on the Wildcat Wrap-Up here on 580 Sports Talk. I have noticed in recent days and weeks that the Kansas State NIL space has been attempting to innovate a little bit, try some different things. There's the partnership with Home Field Apparel that was recently announced. There's more content being delivered to fans as a part of what the NIL collective is doing, more podcasts, things of that nature. What's sort of your view of how the NIL efforts at Kansas State are evolving, and how far do they still have to go to get to the point where they help K-State be the athletic department it wants to be?
Yeah, I love it. It's really pretty cool. I mean, they've got unlimited access to players, kind of like the athletic department, so take advantage of that. And look, I have no idea what the finances are with Wildcat NIL, what their numbers look like, but I'm told they're much improved. And they shouldn't be losing players within the Big 12 based on NIL. But I've also been told the SEC standards right now for NIL are going through the roof, and frankly, probably aren't sustainable. I don't know how you keep generating that kind of income off of what advertisers and donors year after year. I mean, if a donor feels like they're not getting their money's worth, they're not going to donate. So I don't know. I don't know if the K-State will ever be able to keep up with the NCAA athletics as a whole, but I know they can within their peer group, and I think they're doing that. And I think you're going to see them probably flex that a lot in basketball in particular. Football is going to be one thing, but I think basketball, you're going to see them really take advantage of that within the Big 12 conference.
Tim Fitzgerald and his staff at GoPowerCat.com cover K-State like nobody else. They're part of the 24/7 network, sports network, and I cannot recommend becoming a VIP subscriber more highly to check out the great work that they do and get the behind-the-scenes access to outstanding content. You can also check out Fitz on Twitter, Life of Fitz, and you can hear him every Wednesday on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline for the Wildcat Wrap-Up here on 580 Sports Talk. Fitz, always a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll talk to you next Wednesday.
Thanks, boys.
That is Tim Fitzgerald. We made a brief mention of it during the conversation. K-State women's basketball is in action tonight. You'll be able to hear them right after we're done here on 580 Sports Talk. 6 o'clock pregame, 6:30 tip-off at Bramlage. It is senior night for the Wildcat women, as tonight they take on the Iowa State Cyclones. It's women's basketball Farmageddon, if you will. Been a bit of a down year for Iowa State, just 16-10 on the season. Obviously, they got some great Kansas talent. Emily Ryan from Central Plains is still there. So the Iowa State will have a good contingent. Should be a good crowd at Bramlage tonight for that one. 6:30 tip. Again, you can hear it right here on 580 WIBW as the 15th-ranked Wildcats take on the Cyclones. That's going to put a wrap on hour number 3 of our show today. Coming up in the final hour of the program, we've got a lot of headlines to get to. We've got big Lance Leipold news. The KU head football coach is getting a raise. McCole Hardman may have run his mouth a little too much and gotten the Chiefs into trouble. And folks, we have a Chiefsaholic update. That's all coming up on headlines, plus a lot more to come in the final hour of 580 Sports Talk. Let's get it. Final hour of the day on this Wednesday edition of 580 Sports Talk. Dan Lucero, Spencer Dupuis running the two-man game on this edition of the show. Brendan Dworzinski about to get going in Joplin, Missouri for Washburn basketball. Pre-game in 10 minutes. Women tip at 5:30. Men to follow as Washburn takes on Missouri Southern. That's over on our sister station, Classic Country 106.9. But right here on 580 WIBW, FM 104.9, 580WIBW.com, and on our video stream, our YouTube channel, 580 Sports Talk, our Twitter account, 580 Sports Talk, and on Facebook at WIBW News. We've got one final full hour today on the show. And we've got some things to get to today. We'll talk a little Royals baseball. Royals victorious in Cactus League action today. Had to come from behind to win, but some good things happening for Brady Singer and Kyle Isbell, among others, today. We'll talk a little bit about that and why the Royals are going to be one of the best-looking teams on the field. And right now, they are the best-looking team on the field. And I'm not talking about, like, levels of attractiveness here, though I'm sure their mothers all think they're handsome. No, I'm talking about the uniforms, and I'm going to explain why a little bit later on this hour. But we've got a lot of 580 Sports Talk headlines that we can get to today. A whole lot. So we're going to do that. We want your thoughts on anything we're talking about. The YouTube live chat is open. You can also comment in that on the Twitter live chat and on Facebook as well. We see all of your comments if you are commenting on Twitter or Facebook or the YouTube. We also have our text line back, 785-272-9429. That's 785-272-9429. That is the text line number.
Did you see what Mark said in the YouTube comments?
He says he's happy to see that texting is back. And wouldn't you know, it would come back when Brendan isn't around. Yeah, that's so we had a bit of a running joke. Like last year, we were trying to drive up the subscription numbers, and Brendan was on vacation, and we hit a certain milestone, and I took all the credit for it. So now anything good that happens as far as listener engagement, it is all because of me, and Brendan gets no credit. That's how that works. You can share in the credit. I'm totally fine with you doing that, Spencer, and you certainly deserve some. But the joke is that Brendan doesn't get any of it.
Yeah, he doesn't get any of it.
That's the joke. So shout out to Mark for engaging in some program lore there. Let's get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines because there are so many of them. And we will start today in Lawrence, where KU fans may have been bummed about the outcome of last night's men's basketball game. Bad home loss to BYU. Smile, Jayhawks. Lance Leipold got a raise today. Kansas has agreed to a new contract for football coach Lance Leipold that features a significant raise in his average salary to more than $7 million per year. This is according to Pete Thamel of ESPN and later confirmed in a press release by the University of Kansas. The new contract does not feature any new years in his deal that runs through 2029, but the raise from the $5 million per year he made in 2023 serves as another sign of Kansas's aggressive commitment to football in recent years under athletic director Travis Goff. The raise elevates Leipold to the top 3 in average salary in the Big 12. It is nearly 3 times more than the initial salary Leipold was making when he was hired in 2021. Leipold is 17-21 in 3 years at KU, 15-11 in 2 bowl games in the last 2 seasons. The contract also includes a $6 million pool for assistant coaches that increases by $200,000 per year, and a $2.9 million pool for other football staff that increases by $100,000 annually. That could help Leipold retain assistant coaches in the future. Of course, this offseason, KU's staff has taken some hits, most notably losing offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki to Penn State. The writing is on the wall. KU senses the opportunity to finally return to long-term football relevance. And they are willing to spend the money to make sure that they don't miss this window of opportunity. Obviously, there's the $450 $450 million, $450 renovation.
Yeah.
They replaced one chair. No, they've torn down that stadium. Like this is the stadium's gone. $450 million renovation of the football complex and, of course, the football stadium. But now that is also being reflected in how much you are paying your head coach. And if Kansas can pay Lance Leipold a competitive salary, then they're going to keep Lance Leipold in Lawrence for a long time to come. That is great for the program. That is great for the university. That is great for Big 12 football to have a program like Kansas, which was down so bad for so long, finally saying, this is our opportunity to not just seize this moment in Kansas football history, in Big 12 football history, and be good for a couple of years. This is our chance to lay a foundation so that our program never has to go through anything like it did from 2009 to 2021 ever again. That has to be the goal for Kansas. Kansas State has accomplished that. There may come a day where Kansas State football does not make a bowl game for a couple of years in a row, where they struggle, where they go through some periods where they're down at the bottom end of the Big 12 standings. That may happen, but it's likelier that it won't because of the investments they made in the program to make it where it's not just a Bill Snyder thing anymore. We've now seen that it's not just Bill Snyder, that Chris Kleiman has come back and kept things rolling and won a Big 12 championship. And now what K-State football fans experienced for the better part of the 80s, and in truth, in a lot of the decades before that, they are never going to be that again. It is never going to look like that again at Kansas State. And now Kansas has an opportunity to say the same thing. Whatever it looked like from 2009 to 2021, the Turner Gill era, the Charlie Weiss, look at that pile of crap on the field era, the David Beatty era, the Les Miles mistake. We will never put you through that again. That is the statement that Kansas football is making with all of this money that they are spending. And I hope they're successful, because it would be a lot more fun to talk about a consistently successful Kansas and a consistently successful Kansas State than to talk about one of those programs being a bummer and playing jumper by Third Eye Blind every time Brendan gets in his feelings about KU football. That was a running gag, by the way, Spencer. One of our best. Sadly, it is on hiatus, but at least it's on hiatus for good reason. Anyhow, that's our first headline of the day. Big raise for Lance Leipold. He's going to be the third highest paid coach in the new Big 12. What's your first headline today, Spencer?
It's one that I found during the show, and I told you about. You said add it to the headline, so that's what I did. Chiefs receiver McCole Hardman, who everybody knows caught the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl in overtime to walk it off, blacked out at the time, didn't even realize that the magnitude of what he did until Patrick Mahomes was yelling in his face. He joined the Pivot podcast, which if you're not in the podcast sphere and don't know, it's basically features former NFL stars Ryan Clark, Fred Taylor, and Channing Crowder, and they have a lot of good conversations about the NFL, about sports, and with players. And Hardman was featured on there, and he talked extensively about his time with the Jets after they signed him to that 1 year, $4 million deal this past offseason. Basically, everybody knows he didn't get to play. He didn't play at all. He was jumped on the depth chart. He didn't want to be there. And he kind of touched on it. He said, quote, "I was so checked out, like it was over with. I had already talked to Veach and Pat," referring to Chiefs GM Brett Veach and Patrick Mahomes, "like, come get me," Hardman said during his appearance on the Pivot. That sounds a little bit like tampering. Per the NFL policy, quote, "the term tampering as used within the National Football League refers to any interference by a member club with the employer-employee relationship of another club, or an attempt by a club to impermissibly induce a person to seek employment with that club or with the NFL."
So, yeah, you can't be on one team's roster and reach out to the other team's general manager and be like, please come and please make a move to get me back.
So he's just opened up the Chiefs to a potential tampering investigation because he couldn't keep his mouth shut about the end of his time in New York.
Which is very funny. Jets general manager Joe Douglas was asked about that at the Combine on Wednesday and said, quote, those are comments that definitely resonated with us because Hardman was critical really of his whole experience in New York, did not paint the franchise in a flattering light. Now, it looks like McCall has tried to douse some of this. He went on his Twitter yesterday late night, 11:45 p.m., and said, quote, never had talks with KC before the trade, so we can clear that up. The Jets handled my trade on their own and did the right thing by sending me back to KC. That isn't what you said.
Yeah.
Yeah. Clearing up. No, like you said that you talked to Beach and
That you
Mahomes
were checked out
before you left. So, yeah. Like, this could cost the Chiefs a draft pick. That's not out of the question. Like, that it would cost the Chiefs like a 7th-round draft pick. Like, the league's not going to maybe a fine, maybe a draft pick. I don't know generally what the punishment for this level of tampering in. The Chiefs are going to say, look, come on. I know he was the Super Bowl hero, but come on. That guy almost cost us the divisional round. How much are you really going to ding us for making a trade for a guy who caught 17 passes for us? And 8 of them were in one game when we had Blaine Gabbert play quarterback.
Yeah, he also went on to talk about kind of the culture there in the offensive room. He said, you've got a new offensive coaching staff coming in. There's no standard there. Everybody does what they want to do. Granted, the defense has more of a stabilized standard with the coaching staff on that side, so the defense has a standard. But the offense is just like, we'll figure it out. It's Aaron's show. Let Aaron do what Aaron does. Then when Aaron goes down, it's like, we don't know what to do.
It's very funny, and you can very easily imagine it to be true.
Oh, yeah.
I got to shout out McCole Hardman for making the most of his newfound fame. Brendan and I were joking about this yesterday off the air. So, Spencer, you may not have known me long enough to know that I have a Simpsons reference for everything that has ever happened. Like, we frequently will do a conversation on this show, and I will say, well, there's a Simpsons episode where I have the ability to do that. It is like the world's most useless superpower, but I can tie most things back to the Simpsons. And I can tie McCole Hardman's post-Super Bowl media tour back to the Simpsons. There's an episode of the Simpsons where Homer bowls a 300 game and does like a press tour. Just shows up. He's on Springfield Squares. He's doing all this media, taking advantage of his 15 minutes of fame. And then, of course, eventually it runs out. He shows up on Springfield Squares. He wasn't even invited. He just does a walk-on like the Hollywood Squares, but it's in Springfield. He just shows up. Did somebody say a perfect game? Like, that's McCole Hardman right now. He's going to just show up at like the Oscars and be like, did somebody say winning touchdown in the Super Bowl? And try to present the Oscar for like best key grip or something like that. Like, shout out to McCole Hardman. Definitely taking advantage of his opportunities.
So Thomas Morstead, the punter that we all forgot was on the Jets like last week. Do you remember this?
Yeah, I do remember that conversation.
He tweeted this morning, be careful getting information from disgruntled former employees. Getting beat out by a rookie undrafted or rookie free agent after being guaranteed millions of dollars is tough to deal with. Entitlement is a killer of opportunity. You have to earn it every year.
No, I was
referring to
definitely
Hardman.
about McCole Hardman. He didn't use his name, but that's definitely about McCole Hardman. So the other part of this too is like the tampering would have had to have been mutual. Like, McCole Hardman can send all the texts he wants to Patrick Mahomes, like, hey, man, I want to play with you again.
Yeah.
I miss your scent. I miss your musk. We should get an apartment together. I hate playing with Aaron Rodgers. He makes me feel bad, even though he's not even around.
He's not even, he's in California.
I hate being a Jet. This sucks. Please. Like, you can send Brett Veach all the texts in the world. Like, there has to be reciprocity from the Chiefs. And if there's like the barest bit of reciprocity, then yeah, like the Chiefs could theoretically get in trouble for this, but I don't know. But probably more likely this goes nowhere, or there's like a small fine that the league hands down to Hardman or maybe the Chiefs. But I don't see this being anything that like Worst case is probably the loss of a draft pick, but I don't see it elevating to that level. Tampering for a receiver who, again, caught 17 passes in the regular season. But he
did win you a Super Bowl.
Yes, nobody's going to remember those. The only thing they're going to remember is he's Mr. Walk-Off. I can't believe he put that on the back of his jersey at the NBA All-Star Celebrity Game. He went out there with Mr. Walk-Off on his jersey. And listen, I would not be handling it any differently if it were me.
He's trying to get his pop.
If I were a journeyman wide receiver and this were my 15 minutes, I would be milking it in the same fashion.
Jayhawker on YouTube comments, if Hardman initiated the contact, how are the Chiefs at fault?
Well, like I said, there has to be some reciprocity there. But they can investigate, and I would imagine that the league might be at least a little interested in trying to figure out what exactly happened, especially if the Jets make enough noise and complain enough about it. Maybe the Jets don't care. Maybe they were as glad to be rid of him as Hardman was to be rid of the Jets. That's probably true too. So, but yeah, pretty funny that Hardman just can't stop going on podcasts. He did have some interesting things to say about Travis Kelce on that podcast, talking about apparently Kelce tore up the locker room at halftime of the Super Bowl. He flipped the exercise bike. I'll see if I can pull that audio. I'm gonna have to edit it.
Yeah.
But if I get that audio, we'll play it later on this hour. The whole thing is probably worth listening to. I haven't listened to all of it.
I'm gonna have to listen to it.
Yeah. Taking advantage of his 15 minutes of fame, no doubt about it. Speaking of 15 minutes of fame, it is time for an update on Chiefsaholic. Are you
Let's
aware?
hear it? Yes, I've during my time of not working, I tuned a lot into the Pat McAfee show, and they were very much so on the Chiefsaholic.
Yeah, they love the Chiefsaholic story.
So I know all about the Chiefsaholic.
So Chiefsaholic today, Xavier Babidar pled guilty to charges relating to 11 bank robberies in 7 states and laundering the proceeds through area casinos. He faces, as a result of his guilty plea, up to 50 years in the Bing. He must pay $532,000 in restitution. And this probably the most heartbreaking part of all. He has to forfeit that autographed painting of Patrick Mahomes that he bought and tweeted about a week before he got arrested. Xavier Babidar's lawyer spoke today. Can I get audio, please?
You have audio.
So this is, if you've seen video of Chiefsaholic's lawyer, you know who I'm talking about. I'm trying to find his name. What is this guy's name? Oh my gosh. It's gonna bother me if I can't find Matthew Merriman. That's his name. Matthew Merriman spoke today following the guilty plea on the steps of the courthouse.
Yeah.
Like this is an episode of Law and Order. I would watch the hell out of an episode. I wish Jack McCoy could have handled a case like Chiefsaholic before he stepped down as the district attorney on Law and Order. Anyhow, this is Matthew Merriman. This is not a joke. This is actually what he said today. No? Oh, there we go. Here we go.
From the beginning of this case, folks, the government has been blitzing, and Xavier's pocket was collapsing. But today, Xavier stepped into the pressure. He took responsibility for his actions. He stood up in court, humble and repentant, and admitted what he had done.
Real quick aside, robbed a ton of banks to afford tickets to Chiefs games and afford 10-leg parlays on anytime touchdowns. Anyway, continue, Matthew.
I wonder how long he took to write this speech and use the football references.
Let's continue on and hear the rest.
Now, if I know anything about Xavier, and if the Chiefs Kingdom knows anything about Chiefsaholic, we know that he doesn't give up. We know that if he stumbled and he fell, he didn't let his knee touch the ground. And that's because he's capable of doing a great thing. And he knows that there's still hope. We still have a lot of work to do on his case, But Xavier wants everyone to know that he loves the Chiefs Kingdom, he loves Kansas City, and he hopes that you'll rally to his support. Thank you and God bless.
The knee is not down for Chiefsaholic. The play is still alive. I love this guy. I'm a huge Matthew Merriman fan.
Vance says, did this guy graduate from the Missouri School of Law?
The Hollywood Upstairs Legal College. It's so funny. Shout out to Matthew Merriman. Barbara says, I felt like I was listening to a politician. Throw the key away. Yeah, man, he's gonna do hard time. Like, I know Matthew Merriman is standing out there. He stepped into the pressure and his knee is not yet down. You're going to jail. He's going to do a lot of years in prison because he robbed a lot of banks with a gun. Like, this is not, there are no miracles here. It's not like, oh, you know what? He is, in fact, you shut my computer off now. There is, in fact, a way for him to not do time. You're going to jail.
Oh, fun fact. That's the new text machine number.
Yeah. That's the text. That's the text line.
Ping.
From the 785, Mr. Merriman is trying out for the lead DA role on Law and Order. Man, there's no replacing Hang 'em High Jack McCoy. I don't know if you know this. One of the things I did during COVID, because I was furloughed during COVID, I watched all 20 seasons of the original Law and Order in order. They were showing them, and I was DVRing them on. I had YouTube TV at the time, and I watched all 20 seasons of Law and Order. And I have thoughts on the district attorneys, on the ADAs, on the cops. I have all kinds of thoughts.
See, I wish I would have gone back and done that during COVID. I just watched a bunch of different series that are like 2 to 4, maybe 5 seasons long during COVID.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
I just wish I would have picked a series that I've never seen and watched it front to back.
I ran Law and Order front to back, and I had seen a lot of those episodes before. Like, they used to show Law and Order on TNT in college. When I was in college, when you were like in diapers, they used to show, like, that was what they would show instead of like Castle or Bones. There was a lot of Law and Order reruns. So there were a lot of those episodes in the original 20-year run of the OG Law and Order that I had already seen. But it was nice to watch them all again and to reacquaint myself with Jack McCoy, one of the great characters in television history. If they replaced him with Matthew Merriman, I need them to do an episode like every one of those episodes is ripped from the headline stuff. I need a Chiefsaholic episode of Law and Order. Like, I need oxygen in my lungs. I need it so bad. Dick Wolf, wherever you are, please, I'm begging you, make this happen. From the 785, Chiefsaholic is the worst super fan ever. Yeah, I can't argue with that. All time doofus. Do you have any more headlines today, Spencer?
I have non-sports stuff, which we can get to in my final word.
Okay. I do have a sports headline for us, and I thought this was interesting from Fox Sports as we pivot a little bit to baseball. Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred has said that the league is considering lowering the maximum of 13 pitchers on a team's 26-man roster down to 12, possibly as soon as next year. Fox Sports did a little bit of reporting about this, talking to pitchers like Max Scherzer, Jameson Taillon, also Dodgers manager Dave Roberts is quoted in the article. So, 2 schools of thought here. Number one, it is absolutely bad for baseball that the starting pitcher is less prominent in today's game, because it used to be that the starting pitcher was how you sold tickets to a baseball game, or at least in large part, like the reason you would want to go. Like, I remember vividly when I was in high school, and so you may not have even been born, you wee tiny infant little baby Spencer, and I
think I was born at that point.
I'm just giving you grief at this point, Spencer. I'm so much older than you. I remember vividly when you would check we read the newspaper and you would see which team, because I grew up in Denver. You see which team was coming to town to play the Rockies, and you check the probable starters in the paper, and you would see, oh, Roger Clemens is pitching for the Astros when they come to town. We should try to go Saturday to see the Hall of Famer Roger Clemens. Of course, now he's not in the Hall of Fame. Lots of things are different now. There are no, newspapers don't print box scores and probable starters like that. Roger Clemens isn't going to the Hall of Fame. Things change. But that used to be a big part of the draw for a game was, oh, this guy's pitching, because you knew they would be a big part of the game and not, oh, they're going to pitch 5 innings and then they're going to leave, because that's all they do anymore is just pitch 5 innings and fly. And the game is decided by, randos throwing 99 miles an hour out of the bullpen. So I am of the belief that it would be good for baseball if the starting pitcher were more prominent. And if you have one fewer bullpen arm available, that does encourage a team to get more from their starting pitchers. That being said, it is going to take a very long time to change the way pitchers are developed. And I don't just mean by major league organizations. I mean, in general. I mean pitchers at any and all levels of baseball. Because if you want to stay in the game longer, one thing you probably can't do is throw max effort with every pitch. And that's what guys do these days. And that's why you have arm injuries, because for one, the arm just isn't built to throw a baseball, and it's definitely not built to throw a baseball with the amount of torque and velocity that today's modern pitchers put on the baseball. They used to talk about, well, the old Whitey Ford never needed Tommy John. Whitey Ford was throwing 72 miles an hour. Get real.
Hey, I do have a local headline.
Okay, can I finish?
Yeah.
So the argument is sound that it would matter for baseball to have more emphasis on the starting pitcher, and smaller pitching staffs would help. But you're not going to change the way pitchers pitch right away. And the way pitchers pitch is the big reason why you don't see starting pitchers work deep into games, and you don't see starting pitchers have long careers or long seasons, because they do pitch themselves into injuries. That's going to be the kind of change that you have to start preparing for in the minor leagues, and also in amateur baseball, and also in youth baseball. And I don't know how you go about making that change, because how do you get hurt? Throwing the ball hard. Well, how do you get guys out? Throwing the ball hard and making it curve hard and making it dive hard. So I don't know. I think there may be a bit of an impasse as far as this moment in baseball history with the way the game is played, where it might be in the game's best interest to feature more starting pitchers and have fewer pitchers on the roster, but you're just going to lead to more burnout for pitchers. And that's not a good thing for the employees, the people who play the game. So I don't know where that goes, but I'd be very surprised if a change were made within the next year. Anyway, you have one more headline for us today?
Yeah, this coming out, I don't know how, it's a very local headline, but I don't know how big this is. The National Arena League officially announced today that the Topeka Tropics franchise has been terminated from the Arena League. The decision follows attempts by the NAL to find new ownership to assume responsibility for Topeka's participation in the 2024 season. The NAL worked with multiple potential investors to allow the Tropics to continue membership. Despite finding capable investors, it was determined that there was not a viable way to complete a transaction in the short timeline presented before the start of the season. They will continue to explore options for the Topeka market in the future.
R.I.P. Trops. We hardly knew ye. We're going to take a break. We'll come back, and we'll talk a little Royals baseball on the other side here on 580 Sports Talk. 5:38 on 580 Sports Talk. Dan and Spencer with you. They are underway in Joplin, Missouri. Washburn, Missouri Southern tonight. Women's game is underway. You can catch the action throughout the night on our sister station, Classic Country 106.9, the home of the Ichabods. Royals were winners in the Cactus League this afternoon, a 9-7 triumph over the Seattle Mariners. Good start to the spring for Brady Singers. Important year for Brady. We've talked about that. He looked to be making major strides forward in 2022, gave a lot of those gains back in 2023. This year, being counted on a little less, but I think that's a good thing. The Royals no longer need a pitcher who might not be able to be a top-of-the-rotation guy to pitch like a top-of-the-rotation guy. They need him to pitch like a middle-of-the-rotation guy. I think that's a little bit more achievable for Brady Singer. So, Brady Singer, in his spring debut, goes out, pitches well. 2 scoreless innings, 3 strikeouts, no walks, and only 1 hit allowed. Strong start to the spring for Brady. Not so much for free agent acquisition Chris Stratton. He gave up 4 runs on 3 hits and a walk in an inning of work. Gave up a 3-run home run to Cal Raleigh, the starting catcher for the Mariners. Royals at the plate today. Their hero was Kyle Isbell. How about a 3-run dinger for Isbell as part of a 6-run 6th inning for the Royals? Isbell's first homer of the spring. Bobby Witt Jr. had a hit in 3 trips, also drew a walk, stole a base. Nick Prado continued a strong start to the spring, 2 for 3 with an RBI and a run scored. Royals also got a 3-run home run from minor leaguer Ryan Fitzgerald, who came to the Royals from the Red Sox organization, just kind of robbed the filler, but he had a 3-run home run in this game as well. Most importantly, more importantly than the Royals winning, is that they looked good doing it. And I mean in a quite literal sense. Have you seen the Royals uniforms that they're wearing this spring, Spencer?
Yeah, they look not like the new uniforms.
They don't.
They look like the old uniforms.
They look like the old uniforms. And the reason they look like the old uniforms is because you can read the names on the back. They've got the old lettering, essentially. If you've seen, and we've talked a little bit about it, I know we brought it up in headlines. There has been a lot of controversy about the new Major League Baseball uniforms this year that have been produced by Nike in accordance with Fanatics.
Designed by Nike. Produced by Fanatics.
Yes, designed by Nike, produced by Fanatics. A lot of to-do about the uniforms. Players are really not happy with the pants. The uniforms themselves, they just look cheap. They look like something you'd wear in Little League and not something a Major League Baseball player would wear. And one of the reasons they look so cheap is because the font on the back is so small. So the names on the back of the uniforms look smaller. And I guess the idea is, well, it's a lighter fabric, so lighter numbers, smaller numbers are going to feel lighter on the uniform. And the idea is that the whole thing feels lighter on your body, which is supposed to enhance your performance, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, the Royals, though, have regular-sized names on the backs of their jerseys. And the website UniWatch did some digging on this, and they have discovered that the reason that the Royals have big names on the back, or NOBs, instead of small NOBs, it's a very simple reason. They asked.
Shout out to the Royals.
Shout out to the Royals. They asked. They said, hey, we'd like to have our names a little bigger on the back of our jerseys. And the league was like, yeah, all right. So that's it. Like, there were a lot of people watching the first couple of Royal spring training games saying, are they just wearing the old uniforms? No, they're wearing the same uniforms as everybody else. You just read their names because literally the team wanted it that way.
Yeah, I first noticed it, I guess it was Monday or Sunday when that video came out of, I can't remember who it was, going in the corner of the outfield and snagging the catch. And as he was going back there, I was like, his last name looks a lot bigger than I have seen of the other teams this spring. So
yeah, and it does. It stands out. Like when you see the Royals and they're playing another team, it really sticks out that their names on the backs of their uniforms are legible. Like you can read them from far away, and everybody else looks like they got a cheap giveaway jersey on Jersey night at the stadium, where the first 10,000 fans get a jersey brought to you by Kroger or whoever. Yeah, shout out to the Royals. Sometimes that's the best thing to do, right? Is just ask for permission. Just ask, hey, can we do this? And the league is like, fine. And I'm sure now that this is out, I'm sure other teams will maybe make some similar requests. And maybe, just maybe, we'll see a more aesthetically pleasing version of Major League Baseball this year, where the uniforms don't look like cheap Little League giveaways on Kids Day. But shout out to the Royals. They are pioneering in the name on back of uniform space this year. So shout out to them for that. Also, good note from a texter on the 785 in regards to Brady Singer before we turn the page on this segment. The fact that Brady Singer pitched 2 scoreless innings today, that's obviously solid, but as our texter points out, the bigger deal, no walks. The Royals pitchers did walk 5 today, but they also struck out 10. And you like to see, like, for me, the big thing for Singer, got to have command and got to miss some more bats. He didn't miss as many bats as he needs to miss last year. Now, you don't want to sacrifice command for trying to be nasty. It's a fine line you've got to walk, and Brady Singer's never going to be a 200 strikeout a year guy like Cole Reagans has a chance to be. But certainly a positive sign. No walks, 3 strikeouts in 2 innings in Brady Singer's spring debut. We're going to take a quick break. I promised you that audio from McCole Hardman. We do have it. I'm going to play that next. He had something really fascinating to say about Travis Kelce's leadership. We'll play it next on 580 Sports Talk. Round and third, heading for home on this edition of 580 Sports Talk with Dan and Spencer. So earlier we talked about Mecole Hardman, his appearance on Ryan Clark and Channing Crowder's podcast, The Pivot. And he had a lot to say, and some of it might even get him and possibly the Chiefs in trouble if, in fact, he did make contact with Brett Veach and Patrick Mahomes and initiate discussions and have discussions about returning to the Chiefs before he was traded away. That's legally tampering, and that's illegal. So maybe Mecole Hardman's mouth gets him in a little bit of trouble from this podcast. But he had a lot of interesting things to say, a lot of not flattering things to say about the Jets, but some interesting insight into Travis Kelce in particular. Kelce's Saturday night pre-Super Bowl speech, already the stuff of legend, even if we'll never know exactly what he said. Mecole Hardman talks a little bit about that and also how he led by example and by maybe rearranging some furniture in the locker room at halftime of the Super Bowl. First voice you'll hear is Ryan Clark. Then you'll hear Mecole Hardman with some light edits. This is from the Pivot podcast.
Travis Kelce wanted to win the Super Bowl. He wanted to be a part of it. And then obviously he has the second half that he has. What did him stepping up, whether it was his level of leadership, level of play in the playoffs, how much did that help y'all finish the deal?
Leadership. When you said he had that vintage season he had, but when I got back, the leader he was 3-4 times more powerful than it's been since I've been there. Off the charts, bro. Like, I mean, the way he was leading, he was practicing, the way he was, his talk, man, his speech before the game, bro. Saturday.
What was that like?
Bro, like, let's go run through a wall. Like, this is crazy. Like, you ever hear like a Ray Lewis speech? It's like, yeah, let's go, bro. Like, yeah, let's do this. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like the speech he had, bro, you like, oh, this man want to win. Like, okay, you and I'm gonna do everything I got to make sure we get this win for you. Like, not even for the team, for you, because the way you just like, man, in tears, bro, he yelling, like, you like, damn, this man really into it. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like his leadership and his will to want to win was just off the charts. And then you get to the Super Bowl and he get in the locker room, like even when the people undermess the interaction him and Coach Reed have, it wasn't no whatever. He like, man, call some plays. Let us go work. Like we ain't calling the plays we should be calling. Then we get to the locker room, he flipped the table, the training bike over, like, this is what y'all want to leave out here? Like, you know, like this, like, yeah, like, nah, let's go get this. Like, his leadership was top notch. Like the way he led, like it was off the charts. And you could see the difference even in the second half, like the catches he making, how he getting open. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's just like that you can feel that energy, and that energy is contagious. And he got the energy he has is contagious, bro. Like it goes from the head coach all the way down to the people that ain't even playing. It's like everybody up there, we good. Like just him alone, bro, like is he the spark. Like he's that glue that held everybody together.
So pretty cool story there from Mecole Hardman. Again, rather heavily edited.
Yeah.
Kelce wasn't happy at halftime. It was not a happy man at halftime of that game. Flipped the training bike over in the locker room, according to.
I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall.
Yeah, no kidding. Or for the speech, for the Saturday speech. Like, I'm sure nobody who was there will ever forget it and will always wonder, man, what did he say? It's just one of those things that will always live in Chiefs legend. We got to take one more break. The final word is next on 580 Sports Talk. Got about a minute for the final word on today's show. Spencer, lead us off.
While the final vote is not wrapped up, and I am not a political person, so I don't know much of the logistics for it, we are very close to the federal government giving D.C. the land around and at the current site of the soon-to-be demolished RFK Stadium, which means the Commanders, or whatever team name they would ever decide, could go back there. Also, on the heels of FedEx pulling out of the FedEx Field deal, so we could be some big news coming in the next few weeks as a Commanders fan.
Final word for me, it is so rare that with 3 games left in the Big 12 basketball season, KU is a non-factor in the title race, but they excused themselves from the title race with that inexcusable loss to BYU last night. That's going to wrap up our program today. We'll be back tomorrow from 2 until about 5:45 for more 580 Sports Talk. For Spencer, I'm Dan. See ya.